Mayor Jennifer McKelvey. I'm the chair of the Infrastructure and Environment Committee. We have quorum. I now call meeting 5 to order. Welcome, everyone. Today's meeting is being held by video conference and in person at City Hall in Committee Room 2. This meeting is also being live streamed online at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. Although we may be meeting in different locations today, Community Council would like to acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. If you are registered to speak at today's meeting, please listen for me to call your name. I will call speakers in the order they appear on the list. The list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting the Infrastructure and Environment Committee link at toronto.ca/council and clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. The clerk has provided all agenda materials on toronto.ca/council and on CMP, the clerk's meeting portal. Clerk's IT staff are available to members if you need help with your devices. I also want to remind you to please submit and approve your motions by email. Staff are available at iec@toronto.ca to help with motions. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If you do, please raise your hand. Seeing none, we will proceed. So I just want to let members know I need to leave at 2 o'clock for a very important event in my ward. The orangutan exhibit is opening and they are moving into their new home, and I want to welcome them to their new home. So they will be given outdoor space for the first time, so I want to see that. Councillor Cole will be chairing after 2 o'clock if we're not completed the agenda by then. I need a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Councillor Sachs, all those in favor, all those opposed, that item carries. And then we'll now run through the agenda order paper. IE 5.1, two-stroke engine, small equipment, steps to pursue a ban. I will hold as there are 12 deputants on this item. IE 5.2, the Vale of Avoca Yellow Creek 2023 updated next steps. Would anybody like to hold this item? Oh, there's speakers now. Okay, never mind, there's speakers on this item. IE 5.3 Ravine Slope Stabilization update. Would anybody like to hold this item? Somebody like to move the item? Councillor Sachs, all those in favor, all those opposed, that item carries. IE 5.4 Parkside Drive Study update. I will hold as there are 2 deputants. IE 5.5 Planning for an e-scooter pilot. I will hold as there are deputants. IE 5.6 Streetscape Design Gaps. Would anybody like to hold the item? Oh, we need a motion to introduce. Councillor Sachs, all those in favor, all those opposed, that item's carried. So was it not displayed? It's already been on? Okay, and then so motion to approve. All those in favor, all those opposed, that item carries. Okay, that brings us back to 5.1. I will call out deputants in 3 so you can get ready for your turn. Our first speaker is Chris Keating with the Deer Park Residents Group, followed by Gail Behe with the Bayview Village Association, followed by Ingrid Boudet with No More Noise Toronto. Chris Keating, you're up. You have 5 minutes.
On 1, 2, 3.
IT help?
2, 3, yes.
Okay, and well, this is displayed. No, it's the display. Yeah.
I'm trying to get a page displayed.
You might have to flip it.
Flip it.
Yeah. Face up.
Face up.
Okay, and you can't see the timer while this is displayed, so I will give you a 30-second warning.
All right, so
Oh, they can see it in front. Okay, great.
5 minutes, right?
Correct.
Thank you. Oh, my glasses. Thank you, Councillor McKelvey, and thank you, Board. The history of the struggle to ban the use of gas-powered leaf blowers in Toronto dates back many years. In 2001, 22 years ago, Dr. Sheila Bazara, the Toronto Medical Officer of Health, gave a report recommending the Toronto Council approves restrictions on gas-powered leaf blowers. She said that scientific research demonstrates that health effects occur at noise levels below those that impair hearing. Some of these health issues include increased risks of cardiovascular disease and negative effects on sleep, communication performance and behavioral, reading and memory acquisition, and mental health. Unfortunately, Council 22 years ago voted her down. 22 years ago, there were few alternatives for landscapers, but in 2023, transition from a gas-powered leaf blower to a battery-powered leaf blower with zero emissions is less of a challenge. Landscaping companies can transition to cleaner, quieter, and healthier alternatives and achieve efficiencies with lower impact technologies. Mean Green Mowers, for example, offers an all-day battery lasting for 10 hours that you charge overnight. Makita will help the industry with commercial rated battery tools that landscape professionals get a good return on their investment. I'd like to talk about the Environment Climate Department report and how it addresses pollution. The report says that in 2021, Toronto Public Health concluded that the noise, dust, and air pollution resulting from the use of leaf blowers constitutes a nuisance. Calling a pollution from leaf blowers a nuisance is like calling smog an inconvenience. And I think today, with our smog warning out, with Montreal on Sunday having experienced the worst pollution in the world, according to the paper, I think it's time for a change. In 2021, Toronto Public Health was very focused on the COVID epidemic and had little time for researching leaf blowers. Councillor Sachs's motion directed the city manager to report with a plan to implement a ban on the use of two-stroke engine leaf blowers because of their adverse impact on air quality and human health. The city manager determined the climate, health, and noise have not provided a sufficient rationale from the adverse impacts of climate change. Her motion also requested the impact on air quality, on pollution. Pollution is not mentioned. It's understandable not to deep dive into pollution. To analyze the impact on human health involves science. The amount of pollution from leaf blowers would depend on if the leaf blowers is set on high or low, would also depend on how old the leaf blower is. I've given you a handout that I'd like to read from Dr. Evans, who has a reputation in Canada, up there with Dr. Fauci in America. His research is famous in Canada. What is significant in Dr. Evans is that he makes, by the way, I bring to your attention, the awards. I think you have it in front of you. Yeah, the awards that he's got, the guy is through the roof, to say the least. What is significant is that Dr. Evans makes key connections between the emissions of pollutions and the impacts on human health and environment. He says, I strongly encourage the City of Toronto to implement a ban on the use of small two-stroke engine landscaping equipment such as leaf blowers as a precaution against their potential adverse impacts to human health. Two-stroke engines are known to be high emitters of numerous air pollutants, but there is very limited information on the resulting exposure of operators and nearby residents. One such pollutant is ultrafine particles, which are less than 100 nms in diameter. Last summer, we measured the concentration of these ultrafine particles at distances from a single leaf blower that was operated at different powers. The ultrafine particles concentration generated by this leaf blower exceeded 1 million particles per cubic centimeters. Someone breathing this very polluted air would inhale over 1 billion of these particles every breath. The concentration that we measured for this specific leaf blower was 50 times higher than the World Health Organization criterion. I feel that the ban is an appropriate precautionary step for the city to take, given that leaf blowers and other two-stroke engines are known to be highly polluting. Viable and affordable electrical-powered alternatives are now widely available, and I urge the City of Toronto to take a lead in expediting this inevitable and much-needed transition. Final thought. Montreal was the most polluted city, as I've mentioned. Today, young people are trying to deal with all this and have a sense of hopelessness and climate anxiety. They don't feel they are being heard. They feel the adults in the room are not solving the climate crisis. They find it difficult to understand the hypocrisy of business as usual attitudes and ask adults, why don't you feel bad? Rather than just talking about how important climate change is or promising some support for technological development down the line, the specifics have to be meaningful. It's important that politicians have concrete plans for specific actions. I'd like to mention that Councillors Diane Sachs, Bravo, Shelley Carroll, Mike Cawley, Matlow, Moyse, Perks, and Robinsons who have support banning gas-powered reefers. Thank you very much.
Questions of the deputant?
Questions, yes.
Seeing no questions, thank you. I'd like to remind speakers you have 5 minutes. Our next speaker is Gail Beebe, followed by Ingrid Boudet, followed by Dundee Staunton. Gail?
Where's Gail? Doesn't seem to be here.
Hi, Gail. We need you to unmute, please.
Good morning.
Thank you. You have 5 minutes.
PowerPoint presentation. It says I cannot share content unless the host makes me a presenter. So could the host make me a presenter so that I can present my content? Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, good morning. I'm talking here on behalf of the Bayview Village Association. We are a residents association, a nonprofit volunteer founded in 1956. We promote the welfare of Bayview Village residents. We are in Ward 17, Don Valley North, which is Shelley Carroll's award. We are longtime advocates of banning gas-powered leaf blowers. My focus today is gas-powered leaf blowers, but I would like to point out that most of my comments apply to other two-stroke engine small equipment. The problem is that leaf blowers are detrimental to our health and our environment. And I wanted to acquaint you with the issue, some of their health impacts and the environmental impacts. There are negative health effects for anyone nearby during and after use. It impacts all Toronto residents. The elderly, young children, and those with lung disease are more susceptible. There is excessive noise. Leaf blower noise travels long distances, penetrates walls and windows. It adds to Toronto's ambient noise levels, which are already above World Health Organization limits. Just to give you for a feel, at 5 feet, gas-powered leaf blowers are pumping at 82 to 93 dBA. There are a lot of toxic and carcinogenic emissions with two-stroke leaf blowers. The exhaust includes up to 30% unburned fuel as well as combustion products. These products react to produce ozone and smog. These equipment emit carbon monoxide, hydrocarbons, which are toxic, carcinogenic, and ozone forming. There's a higher risk for cancer, heart and lung disease, developmental disorders, infection, and death related to these emissions. California Air Resources Board has done a lot of work on this kind of equipment. I quote from them in 2021. 1 hour of commercial leaf blower operation emits smog-forming pollution comparable to new passenger cars driving 1,700 kilometers over 15 hours of driving. There are hazardous airborne particles, which the previous speaker talked about. Those high-powered air jets create dust, which can stay airborne for days. The dust includes all sorts of stuff. I got a long list here, from pollen to pesticides to excrement to tire residue. And a lot of this dust is very fine, less than 10 microns, and that in diameter, and that lodges in lungs. It's harmful to operators. Close exposure is elevated adverse health impacts. So these operators exposed to noise, the toxic emissions above Ontario workplace short-term exposure limits. And of course, there's that hazardous dust exposure I talked about. Let's turn to the environmental impacts. As I mentioned, those toxic emissions are a source of smog. There's gasoline refueling spills. There are CO2 emissions, and that had a negative impact on Toronto's Transform TO net zero strategy, which was unanimously adopted by council in 2017. And grass clippings pollute local waterways. There's also misuse, snow removal, cleaning parking lots, construction sites, and debris, which is an additional negative effect. We have some issues with a staff report on the two-stroke engine small equipment ban. There's missing information. There's no details on Toronto's Public Health 2023 review on the impacts of gas-powered leaf blowers. Conclusions are based on incomplete data. Notably, 311 does not record complaints during permitted hours of use of this equipment. That's when most equipment is used. So that data doesn't reflect public concern. There's no emissions data from off-road vehicles or equipment. No public consultation. We've heard nothing about this report till last week. The report downplays public support. There's a petition with over 7,500 signatures. Gas Busters, grassroots organization, has over 500 members. And 19 communities. So two-stroke engine leaf blower ban is doable and enforceable. Alternatives exist. Over 200 municipalities across North America already regulate them, including Vancouver, Westmount, Sherbrooke, Ottawa, NCC. There's a total ban in 85 cities in
Final thoughts.
California. So the solution, ban two-stroke engine leaf blowers and garden equipment. Vote for option B in this report. And more information available from this website.
Thank you. Are there questions of the deputant? I'll just change the screen back. Okay, thank you. Seeing none, thank you for joining us. Our next deputant is Ingrid Boudet with No More Noise Toronto, followed by Dundee Staunton with Gas Busters, followed by Jake Cole with Sierra Club. Ingrid?
Hello, I'm online.
Hi, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
I need to be made a co-host or to be allowed to present my material, please. There we go. One moment. And I want to be able to share my audio. There we go. Share. Okay, I'm assuming you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So thank you very much for having me today. My name is Ingrid and I've lived in Ward 4 for over 10 years. I'm representing a group of residents who are concerned about the noise levels in their cities. We have a campaign called No More Noise Toronto, and we're advocating for a healthier, more inclusive and social cities. I'm here to support the banning of gas-powered leaf blowers. They're used for a variety of purposes and most accomplish little at the end of the day. I do not know how long this machine irritated the residents and people passing by, but guaranteed most of what he was on the sidewalk by the end of the day. Later on, you will see that a broom and a dustpan would have done a better job and been better for the worker and everyone else within earshot. Maybe they would have cleaned up that flattened bottle instead of leaving it for someone else, which the video is not rendering properly. So I looked into this and I thought, why have noise bylaws? And I think most would answer for our health and the health of our environment. But this city report said, moreover, the noise bylaw does not prohibit a thing or activity due to environmental or health concerns. This needs to change. The health impacts of noise on people are well known and understood, and previous speakers have spoken to it. The negative impacts start at 55 decibels. Sudden intermittent noises from sources that we can't control are triggering to many people and animals. No matter what, noise affects you and me physically. We have no defense against sound. And you can only make good decisions with good data. And for some reason now this is not showing. So it was in the report, it said it was determined that banning leaf blowers due to noise is overly restrictive based on the low volume of complaints and low public support. This screenshot should actually show, I tried to make a leaf blower report. And like Gail said, you cannot report during daytime hours. So you actually do not know when and how much these leaf blowers impact people. So as No More Noise Toronto, we're going to collect better data. Now, people can log noise complaints at any time of day or night that it bothers them. As 311 only allows complaints between certain hours, you do not know where, how often, or for how long these machines bother people. Your process does not support full understanding of the issue. And this data will go onto the Not 311 dashboard, which is not showing, so I am going to bring it up for you. This is where everybody else will be able to see everyone's noise reports, and including their own. And in this dashboard, which I'm going to bring over for you right now, this actually shows I have 19 leaf blower reports. 14 people actually supplied. There should be dots showing up here. My apologies. Must be with the rendering. 19 people reported on leaf blowers, and all of them reported at night that they never heard the problem. So again, back to the other point, your process is flawed. Our goal with the dashboard and our app is to help the city. We're going to spread the word, get people comfortable with the app so they can submit complaints. This can be a data source available to you as well. These types of engines hurt people's health and harm our planet through disturbance in greenhouse gas emissions. Please support option B, a ban on two-stroke small engine equipment. Thank you.
Thank you for your deputation. Are there any questions of the deputant? Seeing none, our next deputant is Dundee Staunton, followed by Jake Cole, followed by Andrew Monkhouse. Dundee? Thank you for joining us. You have 5 minutes.
For the opportunity to address you today. My name is Dundee Staunton, and I represent Gasbusters, a citizens group of more than 600 residents in Toronto and supported by 19 residents associations. Our mission is to achieve a ban on gas-powered leaf blowers and related garden equipment, much of which is powered by two-stroke engines. Of the options before you today, we urge you to select option B, which would begin the process to ban two-stroke engine small equipment. I had intended to make remarks about the nature of the environmental hazard to operators and bystanders alike from the fumes of these engines, but that has been done previously by fellow speakers. So I will go straight to subsequent points about the relevance of all this to the committee and its considerations. More than 200 municipalities and government institutions across North America have banned gas leaf blowers and related garden equipment. In fact, my colleague has provided a list of those for your viewing here today. At home, our Toronto District School Board, in its Climate Change Action Report of December 2022, declared its intention to transition from gas to electric power in its property maintenance operations. It reached this conclusion in cooperation with its union on the basis of its importance to the health and safety of its members. Rather than looking at the cumulative effect of two-stroke equipment, staff in this committee need to appreciate and eliminate the event-related or incident-related exposures caused by it. My key point is that a ban on two-stroke engines is consistent with Toronto's Transform TO Net Zero strategy, but this equipment is overlooked in the strategy initiatives. The recent staff report, rather than deeming two-stroke equipment to be inconsequential to our carbon reduction goals, should observe that a ban on such machine would grasp low-hanging fruit in the pursuit of our climate change mitigation efforts. Why low-hanging? Because, as has been pointed out previously, viable alternatives are readily available on the market. Electric technology, both wired and cordless, has advanced steadily. Last summer, I encountered on Yonge Street a contractor who was clearing debris from a public walkway with a battery-powered electric leaf blower. When asked, he readily declared his satisfaction with the versatility and effectiveness of his electric equipment. And why a ban as opposed to public education? Because people are generally disinclined to change what has become habitual for them, and it takes government to step in and provide leadership. Look at us as an example of the impact of the seatbelt law in Ontario, which mandated usage against protest and saved thousands of lives. We don't have time to resist steps to arrest climate change. In a city that declared a climate emergency 4 years ago, any inclination to defer action of the kind that we're discussing only makes necessary more urgent action in the future and with a lower probability of success. It is evident from City staff's introductory remarks that they are looking to Council for guidance on the issue of a ban. I quote, City Council may decide to take a precautionary approach with respect to these climate, health, and noise factors and enact a ban regardless. Generally speaking, City Council has the authority to ban the use of two-stroke engine small equipment depending on the nature, scope, adoption, and implementation of the measure. There it is. Our message to members of this committee is to act as champions of personal health and safety in the environment and to recommend to Council a ban of all two-stroke engine small equipment. Thank you.
Thank you for your deputation. Are there any questions of deputant? Just wait till the screen changes. Can we change back screen? Thank you. Questions, deputant? Okay, seeing none, thank you for joining us. Our next deputant is Jake Cole, followed by Andrew Monkhouse, followed by Harold Smith. Jake, you have 5 minutes. Hi, Jake, you just need to unmute, please.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you. My name is Jake Cole. I would want to listen to me. I've got a little bit of an insight into the subject we're speaking about. My former life, I was the Director of Environment with Canadian Coast Guard. I also served as Canada's representative on renewable energy projects with the International Energy Agency. And I have been in the last little while measuring air quality around Ottawa and have learned a lot about the subject. First of all, the subject is not really fully, I don't think, understood or appreciated by most people. Most of us run through our days breathing our air and thinking everything's fine. Besides the fact that I found out that in Ottawa, there's all sorts of air quality hotspots where the air is quite dangerous for people. I also just learned a lot about what we know about air quality and how much we really appreciate it as people. For example, how many people know how many people died from air pollution in Canada in last year and annually in Canada? According to Health Canada, how many people do you think die from air pollution? The answer is 15,000, according to Health Canada's report. And now I'll ask you a separate question. How serious is that? Well, how many people do you think died from COVID-19 in, say, the year 2021 in Canada? If you don't know, it happens to be the same number, about 15,000. Well, here's COVID-19, which is, you can hardly, particularly in the last few years, you could hardly go anywhere without hearing about it every day. And here's air pollution, which you rarely hear about them. Both of them actually are responsible for 15,000 deaths in the year. So it's an important subject and one which I believe most people just don't fully appreciate. You've heard already from a few individuals who have told you about the perils of using the gas-fired leaf blowers, and that's certainly true, and there's much information that you could read or experts would give you which tell you that these things are dangerous for our health. If any of you want to experience a gas-fired leaf blower for yourself, find out where someone is using one and stand around where they're doing it and smell your clothes afterwards and think, just what did you breathe while that was happening? That air quality that you experienced then was probably about as bad as any air quality you would get anywhere in the world for those moments. And if you're going to allow those leaf blowers to continue to operate as they are, and to provide that level of pollution to locally, which is really likely they are local, they only pollute the area around them, but people around them are children, are people unsuspecting walking by, are schools that could be nearby, are people who are playing in yards, could be babies being carried by women and men. those people shouldn't be exposed to that level of air pollution. And if you have something to say about it, I suggest that you take some moves to try to come to the aid of people like myself and others who are exposed to that level of air pollution. I don't think it's impossible for you, or I don't think it's impossible to put a ban on these things right now. You could do that. But what may be more acceptable to everybody is to say there will be a ban as of a certain year and make that instruction very clear that people have a certain amount of time to get rid of or perhaps transform their gas-fired unit into an electric-fired unit over a period of time. That perhaps would be more acceptable to some people involved in the industry. But for those of us in the public who are standing here and getting exposed to this level of air pollution, and you are sitting there with the control to stop that from continuing to happen, I think the next move in your case should be pretty obvious. We can't just sit by and let this continue to happen. The precautionary principle should apply. We know these machines are dangerous for our health. We know that air pollution is a problem. And as you're probably aware right now in Toronto, you have a air pollution advisory out there. Well, I don't think you want to add to that. The wood fires are doing their job on their own. You don't want to add to that by having leaf blowers and other similar two-stroke gas-fired yard appliances being allowed to be used in this city. So I recommend that you follow what the others are saying with some clout and what the experts have already said to you, and take steps to implement this ban. I think the people in Toronto
Final thought.
would appreciate it, and those of us in the rest of the country would appreciate you taking the lead on it. Thank you.
The next speaker is Andrew Monkhouse, followed by Harold Smith, followed by April Engelberg. Andrew? Online? We don't see him? Okay, we'll go to the next speaker, Harold Smith.
Hello, I'm Harold Smith.
Hi, you have 5 minutes, Harold.
Thank you. I represent the Lytton Park Residents Organization, which is in North Toronto. I urge you to please vote for option B. Toronto faces multiple crises of healthcare, climate, and our environment. Hospital ERs have wait times averaging 7 to 8 hours. I know, I was there about a month ago and I'm still in the hospital. There's a nursing shortage, etc. Canadian wildfires are growing in size and intensity. Recently, they've blanketed cities like Toronto, hundreds of miles away, with smoky, toxic, contaminated air. According to the California Air Resources Board, two-stroke gas engines contribute to climate change. Their toxic fumes threaten our health and air, while their obscenely loud noise harms our hearts, minds, and productivity. 22 years ago, Medical Officer of Health and Order of Canada recipient Sheila Basra warned about noise, pollutants, and toxic gases from gas-powered garden equipment and recommended real instructions. But she was ignored. She warned that landscape equipment operators ingested toxic products of the combustion. I have her report, but it's no longer online. Sadly, today, City Hall dismisses these health and environmental concerns. Just look at the reports. In contrast, Mount Sinai Children's Hospital in New York, the Massachusetts Medical Society, Harvard's Chan School of Public Health, etc., warn about the same dangers of this equipment as Dr. Basra. It's disturbing that Toronto Public Health and Transform TO seem unconcerned. Several years ago, Mark Beckering, past director of Environment and Energy, told me they emitted two-stroke engines from Transform TO, partly because they feared lawsuits. Energy and Environment, as I understand it, still fears lawsuits. But that doesn't stop other cities from acting. Toronto Public Health deems two-stroke engine concerns a nuisance. But to those operating this equipment, or living nearby, the emissions and noise impacts are significant and more than a nuisance. In fact, when this equipment is operating near my house, I have to shut the windows because of the noise and the fumes. I'm 76 years old, and I'm certainly vulnerable to this kind of pollution. While City Hall is heated industry, Toronto's well-represented construction and landscape industries oppose a ban. While City Hall is heated industry instead of medical and environmental city science, hundreds of cities have banned or restricted leaf blowers, including Beaconsfield, Sherbrooke, Oak Bay, BC, and parts of Vancouver. The National Capital Commission also banned all small gas-powered tools, including leaf blowers. Other Canadian cities are interested, while Toronto has kept making excuses for inaction. How can Toronto declare a climate emergency when its Environment and Energy Division won't even recommend banning the most polluting equipment on the market, two-stroke gas engines? That, some would say that's hypocrisy. Today, when battery equipment is readily available and other cities are banning or meaningfully restricting the most polluting and dirtiest gas engines, why does City Hall continue heating industry lobbyists at the expense of our environment, health, and Toronto's livability? What does that say about Toronto's values? It's time to make Toronto cleaner, quieter, and healthier for everyone by banning two-stroke gas engines. I presume you've all run for public office to serve public good. Here's your chance. Please vote for option B. With a new mayor, there's opportunity for progress. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, thank you for joining us. Our next speaker is April Engelberg, followed by John Watt, followed by Peter Sepsky. April, do we have you online? April, we just need you to unmute, and you have 5 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Good morning, everybody. My name is April Engelberg. You might know me as I've run for City Council in Spadina, Fort York. I'm coming at this from a different angle. I'm asking you to vote for option B to ban the two-powered engine leaf blowers. And this is why. For me, this is a personal issue. I'm coming at this from a disability perspective. I had a very long concussion. I was on short-term disability. I was on long-term disability. I've overcome it. But the bane of my existence was these leaf blowers. And I know that it's not just me. I know it's people suffering from concussions, but also lots of people with noise sensitivity issues. It's absolutely unbearable when there would be one of these, actually, not one of these, 2 or 3 of these leaf blowers outside my window. I would literally be in my bathroom in the dark wearing earplugs and noise canceling headphones. That's just how much it impacts people with noise sensitivity. Just for context, when you're recovering from a concussion, you're extremely noise sensitive and extremely light sensitive. And out of all sounds, I need to emphasize, leaf blowers are the worst ones. And I'm coming here to say this because I'm thankfully well enough to, but I believe most people that are the worst affected by this noise are not able to speak up for themselves right now. And so I want to do that for them. And that's all I got. I'm asking you to ban the leaf blowers.
Thank you. Are there any questions of deputant? Okay, seeing none, thank you for joining us, April. Our next speaker is John Watt, followed by Peter Sepsky, followed by Hamish Wilson. John Watt, online. Oh, in person. Okay, great. Come on up. You have 5 minutes.
Good morning. I'm here with many community leaders who are fighting climate change and noise pollution in Toronto. As we stand here while our country burns from forest fires from coast to coast due to climate change, I ask you what we can do to protect the environment and the health of our community. We plead with the Toronto City Council once again to express their unanimous support for a complete ban on the use of two-stroke gasoline engines and related garden equipment in Toronto. This ban will help make Toronto become a sustainable and healthy city to live in, and action now will prevent further disaster to our environment and health. As you can hear, I'm congested as I'm speaking today, as are many Canadians in this country. We have to do something, and now is the time to act. We've been asking for change for almost 20 years, all the while knowing the harmful effects to two-stroke gasoline engines on our health and environment. As Al Gore said so well 17 years ago, this is an inconvenient truth that requires attention and action. That was 17 years ago. Does industry trump the health of our residents and environment? Isn't it a human right to have clean air and a safe environment? The automotive industry is making the transition to green. Why can't Toronto make this change? The rest of the country is looking at Toronto to make the change. We are the biggest city in this country. Why not be progressive and do something? So then, do you have the courage and conviction to make this important change? Can you please not defer this important decision yet again? Time is ticking. Banning two-stroke gasoline engines and related garden equipment is one of the most obvious change to move to electric and other energy, green energy alternatives. Among landscaping equipment, gasoline leaf blowers are the worst offenders to the environment and to operators surrounding people's health. The emissions of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere of one gas-powered leaf blower is the same as 500 cars running 30 minutes. Did you know that there are over 7,500 complaints alone made by residents of Toronto on the Change.org Commission to tell Toronto City Council to ban two-stroke leaf blowers and green garden and similar garden equipment, not to mention hundreds of documented complaints from other residents. However, surprisingly, City's 311 line does not have a process to record these complaints. You'll also see in the communications to this meeting, we have over 250 comments to support this ban. Surely it shouldn't take the number of complaints for the City of Toronto to act swiftly to make the change to protect the health and well-being of residents in our environment. Here is some important information as context. City Council voted unanimously to approve the Transform TO climate change action strategy to reduce community-wide greenhouse gas emissions in Toronto to net zero by 2040. Yet, we are lagging well behind over 200 municipalities across North America to make this change happen. The city's Infrastructure and Environment Committee could not find evidence to support a ban based on their three approaches of climate, health, and noise that has prevented action to be taken to ban two-stroke engines. Why is this? We have had scientific proof of the hazards for well over 20 years. So, for the sake of the environment and the health of everyone in Toronto, let's ban the use of two-stroke gasoline engines and related garden equipment in Toronto now. Let's work together and make meaningful and impactful changes by making a decision to make Toronto a leader for being a healthy city and stop being a dinosaur of hazardous emissions and noise. Let's move towards zero emissions in the use of landscaping equipment. Please do not stall this important ban by further bureaucracy, red tape, and death by committee. The science and facts are there. The time is critical to our planet and health of our residents.
Thank you. Questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, thank you for joining us today.
you.
Peter Sepsky is our next presenter, followed by Hamish Wilson, followed by Housen Chong. Piotr? Hi, thank you for joining us. You have 5 minutes and we can hear you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Mayor McKelvey, councillors. I would like you to vote on the ban on small two-stroke engine gardening equipment. There is so much noise pollution in Toronto. There are loud cars and motorcycles racing on the streets. There is construction equipment. There are vehicles that need to inform me in my home with a loud beeping sound that they are backing up somewhere in the neighborhood. Tunes played over and over by ice cream vendors in parks are also noise pollution. And there are two-stroke gas engine small gardening equipment. All this noise is messing with our health. We need to start dealing with this. Two-stroke engine gardening equipment is a good place to start. They are very loud machines. They produce particulate pollution by lifting small matter from the ground back into the air. They burn gasoline incompletely and with that produce toxic fumes. All the burned fuel releases carbon that is fueling forest fires. Even if it's small amount of fuel being burned, compared to all the SUVs on Toronto roads, it's burning that we can easily stop. Electric replacements are very easy to find and buy. My landlord's contractor started using a gas leaf blower last year. When it was being used, I closed windows to try to lower the deafening noise. It didn't help much. Even worse, the gasoline fumes still got into my apartment, making it smell like an underground garage. I felt trapped in my own home. When the City of Toronto itself is using two-stroke engine gardening equipment in city parks, it feels even worse. Municipalities around the world are rethinking their gardening practices and letting nature take over from our bad practices. But in Toronto, it seems that all we can do is just carry on with the motions. Leaves in the parks are blown away by two-stroke equipment as soon as they fall from trees. Grass is being cut as soon as dandelion heads show themselves. I would be happy if the City of Toronto stopped using two-stroke engine gardening equipment. I would be even happier with a citywide ban. Thank you.
Thank you for your deputation. Are there any questions of the deputants? Okay, seeing none, our next deputant is Hamish Wilson, followed by Housen Chong, followed by our final deputant on this item, Kathy McDonald. Hamish? Good morning. Look at you. You're all ready to go. Okay, you got 5 minutes.
Well,
You know how it works.
yeah, I'll try and be shorter today. Thank you for everyone for hauling in today, and good morning. Please go ahead and ban these. Option B, please. It's been far too long. Oh, wonderful. This is coming up. Great. Thank you, staff. In some ways, they're helpful, and so I'm not sure that a battery-operated leaf blower or whatever air blowers will necessarily help the gardening that much and the particulate issues, because they'll still be blowing all sorts of air, but nonetheless they're pretty stinking bad. Generally. So please, yes, let's do option B. And as a cyclist, I notice, I'm sometimes biking along in the quiet residential areas and cough, and I've got enough longevity issues as it is. The noise pollution is really oppressive and disturbing. And if you are going to move ahead with banning two-stroke equipment, please include modified bicycles. Sometimes I'm seeing and hearing some two-stroke engines attached to normal bicycles, and like the other lack of enforcement on some issues, they're getting away with it, and I applaud the ingenuity of the people that are modifying the bikes, and at least you hear them coming behind you, unlike some of the other quick and quiet e-bikes and fast hole types. But nonetheless, they're really stinking bad. So if you're really concerned about the air pollution and everything else and starting to ban things, things, let's consider this sort of option here from only 1999. And 2011 was not that long ago, and we have to have better transit in the right places first before we go ahead and do this. So nonetheless, please start with option B, and yes, maybe the 8-cylinder cars next and the vintage cars. They're a real serial killer. Thank you.
Thank you for your deputation. Are there any questions of the deputant? Okay, next deputant is Hao Sen Chong, followed by Kathy McDonald. Hao Sen, online.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
My
You
name
have
is Hao
5
Sen
minutes.
Chong.
We can hear you.
Thanks. Hao Sen, I'm getting over a chest cold, so you may hear me cough every once in a while. I apologize for that. I'm the climate justice campaigner from the Toronto Environmental Alliance, and maybe folks might not be shocked to hear that we are also calling for this committee to support option B. Two-stroke engines are some of the worst, some of the world's least efficient fossil fuel engines on the planet. And as a result, we think they should be banned in the city, and that's for 3 reasons. The reason one is for climate reasons. The city in 2019 declared a climate emergency. In 2021, the Transform TO Net Zero by 2040 was approved. And this summer, we can see some of the results of the relatively slow action. Even outside today, you can smell the wildfire smoke. Number 2 is for worker and resident health, and that's under 2 categories. The first category is direct air pollution. Two-stroke engines produce volatile organic compounds, particulate matter, carbon monoxide, and that has a direct local air quality impact on people who are working as well as the residents there. And because they're the least efficient engine, gasoline or fossil fuel engine that there is, the amount of air pollution that comes out as per unit of gasoline placed in is much, much higher than more efficient engines that like you would find in a car, for example. Secondly is noise. I don't think people might understand how loud some of these things are. They actually go at around 80 or 90 decibels. That under sustained time, that's enough to damage human hearing, like physically damage eardrums. Electric lawn machines in comparison run at about 60 to 70 decibels, which is about the amount that you would hear in a regular conversation. The decibel scale is logarithmic, which means that every 10 decibels, it's 100. Sorry, every 10 decibels, or it goes by like a significant amount. And so that means that these electric lawn machines are anywhere between 100 to 1,000 times quieter than 2-stroke gas machines that they would be replacing. And so that's something to consider as well. Finally, the third reason is that the cost alternatives are actually comparable, and the costs come when you actually like buy the actual machine itself. The costs are comparable now between electric lawn machines and the 2-stroke gas engine ones. And secondly, the maintenance costs are lower typically because electric engines typically have fewer lower maintenance costs. There's fewer moving parts. You don't need to put in oil to make sure all the gears are turning properly, which itself is another pollutant that we have to worry about as well. And so for all these 3 reasons, we are recommending that this committee move forward in supporting option B for an eventual total ban in the city of Toronto.
Great, thank you. Questions of the deputant? Okay, thank you for joining us. Our last deputant on this item is Kathy McDonald with Fontra. Hi, Kathy, we just need you to unmute.
Yes.
Thank you, we can hear you.
Yes,
5
I'm
minutes.
here. Thank you. Yes, as the last speaker, I note that so many of the issues are already well covered, and I would like to just focus on timing here. Option B seems to take a lot of time, and about a year ago, there's a report EC 31.4 on noise directives that recommended that this issue be dealt with as part of the noise bylaw review, which is starting in the fall, and is the report is to be done in November. The option B seems to go on into the next year. So, given, and the recommendation was to report on decibel limits for these machines. So my recommendation is the third option is to include the issue of from these machines in the upcoming zoning bylaw review and not extend it into the next year and then maybe even more. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none. Questions of staff? Councillor Sachs. Yes. Oh, sorry, outside councillors first. Councillor Carroll, did you have any questions? Councillor Carroll.
Just one. The recommendation, if we were to go with option B, the recommendation says if the funds are to be included in the 2024 budget, which is it's a slightly different way. Could we not set a recommendation that that staff actually include the resources necessary in their 2024 budget draft?
I may, sorry, through the chair, and I won't necessarily speak to that. We can confer with the financial planning division on structuring that as it relates to budget. I think the essence of the recommendation was to flag the need for resources. For example, from an environment and climate perspective, our resources are focused on buildings, transportation, the large sources of emissions. To move and focus and do the work needed to do this type of work correctly would require either additional resources or to move resources off of those current priorities. So we included this to identify that resourcing allocation. So we can talk to FPD around how that might be structured, including coming forward with requests, but I think the essence was to identify that resource need.
But we're not at the stage, I don't think, where that comes soon enough in August. But at this point, I don't need to talk to financial planning. I'm not trying to be belligerent here, but aren't I at this point, am I not talking to you? And so I can direct you, please put that in your budget draft. And then it's up to council to have that conversation with finance staff. And it's up to council to decide whether or not they want it in the budget and then vote for it.
Yes, you can direct us to put it in our.
So we could amend this to say, include the necessary resources in the 2024 budget draft for this division, and then whether or not council wants to fund it will be up to council and the mayor, of course. I'm seeing that's not an amendment.
So we still don't know the way the budget will go next year, and under strong mayor powers, it could be the mayor's budget, in which case it would have to recommend that the mayor include it in their budget.
Okay, well, between now and council, if you don't want me to do the amendment today, but between now and council, I'm going to be looking at whether or not that is the case at this juncture, because at this juncture, I don't think that is the case. At this juncture, council should still be in these committees, letting the mayor and the finance department know what they would like to see in drafts. And then if the mayor wants to amend it back out, they certainly can. But these committees are where council lets the world know what the committee have just told us they want and puts it in drafts. So if you don't want to see that amendment today, I can wait till council and pursue it offline, but I will be pursuing it.
Okay. So this will come to council, so we can amend the item there with language, and you're welcome to follow up with the CFO, but that was the rationale for how it was worded right now was to leave all the options open. Additional questions of staff. Councillor Sachs?
Yes, thank you. And certainly I'm going to support the suggestion from Councillor Carroll that we should make that a motion today. It should be in today's motion. Question to staff. First of all, in terms of previous council action on this, in December 2021, council, as item 20 of the Net Zero Action Plan, council expressed its support for a ban on the use of two-stroke engines. And requested a report back on the implementation of a ban in 2022. We didn't get a report back on implementation of ban in 2022, did we?
There was, I think the report back, there was a report back through the noise bylaw in 2022 related to two-stroke engines, but it did not include recommendations or information on implementation of a ban. No.
And in fact, since this item in the Net Zero Action Plan, we haven't done anything to ban two-stroke engines, correct?
That's correct. We have not done anything to ban them community-wide. Work continues corporately.
Correct. So for the Medical Officer of Health, or Toronto Public Health, I think is online, we have very, very, very bad air quality due to climate-driven wildfires again this week. Isn't it true that health damage from air pollution is cumulative? So adding additional pollution, even from sources like leaf blowers, worsens the health impact, especially on the vulnerable. Is that correct?
Through the chair, it is cumulative. We do know that. It does depend on what the sources is and the concentrations of various pollutants, but it is cumulative.
All right. And given that it's cumulative damage and the damage is already very bad, isn't the precautionary principle an appropriate principle when it comes to protecting public health?
We advocate for the precautionary principle when that's the best way to move forward, but we also rely on the evidence to inform what the appropriate steps are. So in this case, we've undertaken quite a bit of work looking at the literature and looking at the evidence and really trying to figure out if the exposure to emissions from this specific equipment is something that the evidence right now shows is connected to adverse health impacts. And we haven't seen that. We're not disputing that exposure to air pollutants in general are connected to adverse health impacts. We just didn't see in the evidence that exposure to two-stroke engine equipment of this kind is something that's connected.
Right. So you couldn't find evidence that directly tied just these machines to specific health efforts. But we know that the impacts are cumulative, and we know that the precautionary approach is appropriate for protecting public health. Do you agree with me that far?
Through that chair, yes.
Okay. And in this report, we have a collective report from staff that it is within the city's power to take a precautionary approach and to protect public health by banning these engines, correct?
Through that chair, I believe so. I think that's perhaps a question to legal.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Nolan. Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions of staff? Councillor Morley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. To staff, I had a couple of questions, but I think our deputants today really surfaced a lot of the issues incredibly well. Mine is more specifically to the public education campaign and how might we measure success. So if the goal of the public information campaign is more responsible equipment operators, what metrics do we have to measure success? We've heard about our inability to track noise complaints with this issue on 311 due to the daytime hours. So if you could talk to us a little bit more about how we might monitor and track any progress on this issue if we move to ban or make changes today.
Actually, Councillor Morley, it's Carlton here from MLS. That campaign we did with our partners in communications and other divisions. The metrics are challenging to see a decline. However, we do track the number of visits. So we had 812,000 people engaged through social media and another 20,000 engaged on the city's website. We ran the campaign in the summer of 2022, and we will be running it again this summer and this fall in 2023.
That's great. Just a quick follow-up on that. How are we looking to specifically target two-stroke engine equipment users, and what does that look like for us?
The approach, thank you for the question. The approach is really to work with residents, industry, contractors to get that message out there and to show that the city's moving in a direction, and that as manufacturers develop new technology for those residents and contractors and industry to move towards that.
That's great. And just one quick final one. If we do move today to ban this issue, is it feasible for us to implement a 311 complaint process for during the day where we might be able to better capture this use and stay on top of it?
The short answer is yes. We would work with our partners in 311 to ensure that we are getting complaints when the activity is happening, similar to amplified sound and construction. They also have time limitations, but we do take the calls in. So I think there is an opportunity to address that. And as a result, the deputants have identified the flaw in our current calculations.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions? Okay, I have a few questions. Firstly, I know you have a correction in the report. Do you just want to let us know, and it will by what it is and what it will be updated for the next meeting, or for when it comes to council?
One correction on the climate change information related to the corporate emissions for the category that two-stroke engines fall into. So that's all small engines. So it's not just two-stroke engines. It'd also be all of our lawnmowers, as well as things like a sidewalk or street vacuum cleaners. The percent of corporate emissions is actually 0.2%, not 0.05%. So we will be making that update. It is still a relatively small amount. I think somewhere in the range of about 520 I'm going to say kilograms or tons, 520 tons of CO2 emissions out of 250,000 corporately. But we do want to make sure that number was clear. Again, it is not the total for two-stroke engines. They are just within that category, so it will be less than 2.2%. But for accuracy, we did want to make that update.
Okay, and there are two options in front of us. Do staff have a recommendation for today?
So our recommendation, or on the work we had done, identified that we were not recommending it for any specific items in terms of the ban, but we did identify that given unknowns as well as uncertainties around cumulative or combined effects, council could move forward with a precautionary approach. That is why we included option B in the report. But staff are not recommending a ban based on the information we have.
Okay. And what is the readiness of residential, business, and commercial operators to transition their equipment in practices? Do we know?
So we don't know. I think if I could look to my friends kind of on the operating side if they would like to add anything in terms of the city, but from a residential or corporate perspective, we are not aware of that. If we were to move forward, that would be part of the engagement around transition and how that would work, any exceptions, timing, etc., to ensure that a ban could move forward effectively and efficiently.
So you don't have a rec specifically around engagement, but I have asked to have you help prepare one. So could that cover some of those issues around engagement?
Yes, I think we included a little bit in our implementation plan, but recommendations specifically related to that would be helpful.
Okay, thank you. Additional questions to staff? Seeing none. Speakers on this item? Councillor Carroll.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. Our community has been asking for this for a long time, as they mentioned. When I first brought this forward, which was early in the last term of office, not this term of office. When I first brought this forward in 2019, the reason I brought it forward was I was just following up on work from my predecessor councillor. Councillor Shiner had pursued it before me in this part of my new larger ward. And before him, in my first term of office, Councillor Walker was pursuing this. That's why you got the comments from Sheila Baswer. And it's really time for us to take this seriously. The good news is the innovation that's happened in the interim. You know, when we were talking about this in 2005, electric equipment along these lines was overpriced for its ineffectiveness. And that's no longer the case, such that some of the landscape companies in the community that speaks about it from my ward, Bayview Village, they get their contracts by advertising that they are no longer using two-stroke engines. That's how they get the contract with their homeowner in the first place. So the equipment is it's affordable for them. It's durable. It's quieter. It's not silent, but it is quieter, and so that's how they get their business. So while we can't unequivocally say is our landscaping companies ready for this, certainly some of them are realizing its market advantage. Ideally, what we would like them to do is go back to using leaf blowers to blow leaves in the fall and using the marvelous invention known as the rake for clippings. But that's not going to happen. Once you've found an automated solution, you're not going back. But there are better automated solutions, and certainly better than the first time we had this conversation in 2005. So really, there's no reason not to pursue it. I asked my question about the way we're wording recommendations because I really think we need to look at that. I'm cognizant of Bill 39 and the strong mayor powers, but the mayor really had the power to work with this senior management team and really stick handle the budget and what we're going to resource through the City of Toronto Act, even before Bill 39. But our practice was, through the year, committees do their committee work and hear the community, say what should be in budget drafts, and instruct staff to put them in their drafts. And they show up there as new and enhanced requests, heaven knows. But that's the point at which those robust mayor or strong mayor powers come into play, and they may start to make a determination about whether or not we're accommodating new and enhanced requests this year. Oops, turns out the mayor set a target. We're not looking at anything new and enhanced. But we have to start to document. If staff are going to do the work and do the costing for us, let's document it. Let's put it in a draft, and if we've decided not to do it, fine. But let's keep afloat. This is what we said it would cost, and maybe you're not doing it now, but if you're doing it later, the work's been done and the documentation is there, and maybe next time. I'd like to see it documented. Certainly, I'd like it to succeed. I'd like it to be in the 2024 budget, and let's just do her, get her done. But even if we don't, I want to have the option of being able to pursue it in subsequent budgets. And so let's remember that that's the work that council does in standing committees, and we want it to show up somewhere so that if a mayor, whomever, we could have been having this conversation last week instead of post a mayor being elected. But in any term, whomever is the mayor, they should know what we heard in this room and what should be in a budget draft, and then they can decide from there. That's why I hope to see that amendment either here through my colleague, Councillor Sachs, or certainly at council where I have the option of positioning it myself. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Additional speakers to this item, Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank everyone for their participation today. Similar to Councillor Carroll, I haven't been around just quite as long, but I do remember when I worked for Councillor Campbell in Etobicoke Centre, this was a special item that he was very passionate about for residents there. And, for a lot of the reasons that were surfaced today, both by staff through this good report as well as through our deputants, I think, the best way for us to lead by example is to move forward with pursuing a ban on the two-stroke engine equipment. And I'd like to move that recommendation. I am someone, in my early 30s, I have an incredible amount of anxiety around the climate, and I have an incredible sense of urgency that we get working on these issues as opposed to continuing to kick them down the road. So that is what I'd like to move here today, and those are my comments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Motion?
To move option B.
Okay. Councillor Morley is moving option B. Councillor Sachs.
Yes, well, I already pre-circulated a motion to do the same. Are you okay to? Okay.
So you're standing yours down? Okay.
Okay, so there was a pre-circulated motion to support option B. I've also just sent in to the clerk a motion to follow Councillor Carroll's excellent suggestion that we should direct staff to include necessary resources in their proposal for the 2024 budget, so that I know staff just got and is working on. I do want to say that it is time that we get on with this. We are in a situation where, again, this week, the toddlers can't go outside. We are in a climate emergency, and we're in an air quality emergency where the air quality is dangerous to people's health. And adding additional unnecessary pollution on top of what we can't stop, knowing that it's cumulative, noting that the precautionary approach is appropriate, this is time to move on. We will never have exact proof that each particular source of pollution is making specific people sick. We don't collect enough data, and people are complicated. We don't really need to have a body count with a toe tag, as my colleague just asked. Do we have a toe tag that this person died from leaf blowers? Well, we're not ever going to have that. And if we insist on having that before we take action, then we're going to continue to sit on our hands as people choke. And it's our obligation to get on with this. Other cities are doing it. This council has made resolution over and over that we're going to do it. In 2021, council specifically said, yes, we support the ban. We directed a report on it in 2022, and we didn't get it. So we need to finally get off our behinds, pass the ban, direct staff to get on with it, and do what we can. I mean, we have, of course, many, many different things to do with money. This doesn't have to cost a lot, but it is something that we need to do. And of all the challenges we have on climate and on air quality, almost all of them are bigger than this. If we can't do the littlest things, how are we ever going to do the big ones? So please support my motion. Let's give staff direction to get on with the ban finally, at long last, and get on to other things. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Sorry, she's going to, they're going to display your motion. Just make sure you're.
Right, so there are two motions. One is for option.
Yep, we saw that one. What
And
motion?
the other one is to, there we are, request the mayor to include resources to implement option B in the 2024 budget.
Okay.
Excellent suggestion, Councillor Carroll. Thank you.
Additional speakers? Okay, I have a motion as well. If motion 1A by Councillor Sachs carries, that the executive director engage residents, businesses, stakeholders on implementation of the ban, including provisions to ensure a feasible approach to transitioning towards alternate equipment and practices, and consider the diverse needs and challenges of residents and businesses who use two-stroke for their own use, and commercial operators who provide services using two-stroke engine equipment, a phased approach to the implementation of a ban based on the ability of user groups to comply. Yep.
I'm sorry, I had one other motion, which was about supportive measures. We got that a couple of days ago. I got a confirmation that there should be investigated supportive measures such as a landing library.
Oh, yes. Have you seen that? I've seen it. Yeah. I think it's advanced circulated. So it's advanced circulated. You just need to move it. So I'll just go back to you for speakers. Councillor Sachs to speak.
And I had one other motion, which was to ask staff as they move to implement the ban, for opportunities for supportive measures. And in particular, I asked them to look at two things. One is a lending library for low emission equipment, and also for opportunities to collaborate with community groups and with manufacturers and vendors of equipment to see what we can do to move this transition along. And have you found it? Okay, thank you. Sorry, too many motions.
So we can proceed to vote on the motion. So option B. Motion 1A. All those in favor? This is the ban. Yeah. All those opposed? The item carries. Motion, the second part of the motion with the resources, all those in favor? All those opposed? That carries. The library one by Councillor Sachs, all those in favor? All those opposed? That carries. And then my motion around.
Councillor Cole, I want to record a vote on that library issue. Okay?
Okay, on the lending library, all those in favor? Councillor Sachs, Councillor Morley, Councillor Burnside, McKelvey, Perruzza, all those opposed? Councillor Cole. That carries. Did mine go through yet? Did we do mine? Okay, motion on engagement, my motion, all those in favor? All those opposed? That carries. Item is amended, all those in favor? All those opposed? That carries. IE 5.2, the Vale of Avoca Yellow Creek. We have two speakers. The first speaker is Mary Renaud. The second speaker is John Bostons. Do we have Mary? I will work with the clerk to confirm the third letter, the third speaker. They'll come speak to you. So I have three speakers. First item is Mary. Do you have Mary in the room? Hi, Mary. Thanks for joining us. You have 3 minutes. Yes. Sorry, 5 minutes. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. When we have a lot of speakers, we often shorten it. Go ahead.
My name's Mary Renaud. And I'm here on behalf of the Deer Park Residents Group. Briefly on this topic, we would wish to express our appreciation for the staff report setting out planned next steps towards the development of the master plan for the Yellow Creek and Vale of Avoca Ravine, to emphasize the need for erosion control beyond that required to protect Toronto water infrastructure, and to particularly express our concern for the need to speedily develop a plan for trail construction, stream and ecological remediation that will meet the increasing needs of the rapidly growing population in the Yonge St. Clair corridor. To wit, in the Deer Park area, we have 14 residential developments in various stages of approval with thousands of new residents expected. And to further reemphasize the need for funding the capital projects that will be required to implement that plan. We do recognize the severe fiscal constraints within which the city is operating, and we consequently anticipate the need for private fundraising to augment what the city can do within its resources. Providing the necessary capital plan, a vision for the ravine, as well as a statement for the funding needs required for its implementation is an essential prerequisite for raising private funds. The sooner that can be finalized, the sooner we can start to implement it. As relates to some, before turning to more general issues, I wanted to draw your attention to a couple of specific matters. The Heath Crescent stairs, those stairs were damaged. The stairs from Heath Crescent down into the ravine just south of Mount Pleasant Cemetery provide the main access for residents from north and east of the ravine, together with the matching stairs up to Heath Street and Ferndale. On the other side of the ravine, it provides a well-used pedestrian link into the ravine and the cemetery and into the neighborhood and businesses of Deer Park. As the stairs were damaged 10 years ago in 2013, with repairs delayed largely because of the need for stabilization of an unstable ravine slope. However, the implementation of the replacement repair of the stairs is not currently scheduled before 2030-31. The damaged stairs need to be removed to implement the necessary slope stabilization. This could result in a 6-year period or longer, in which no access to the ravine is possible from that side of Moore Park north of St. Clair. The length of time is unacceptable, and funding to make possible the repair replacement at the same time as the slope stabilization must be found. A similar state of disrepair exists for the steps down from the northwest end of the St. Clair Bridge. The northbound steps down from the bridge have been closed off since 2020. The path from the bottom of the steps to where it joins the main path from the cemetery to under the St. Clair Bridge is eroded to the point of being unusable. We believe it would be coherent for this project to be worked into the plan for slope stabilization and trail enhancement. As to erosion control, we wish to emphasize the need for a more comprehensive erosion control plan. The key issue is that erosion is a much more pervasive issue than just the need to protect the Toronto water infrastructure. While we recognize that need is paramount, especially elsewhere in other ravines in the city where sanitary sewers are exposed to risk, the need for erosion control extends beyond this in the Yellow Creek area to protection of ravine slopes and path, with two critical areas where erosion is serious and accelerating. The areas below the houses on Englewood and the west side of the pedestrian bridge below David Balfour Park. And I believe Mr. Bossons will be talking about that in greater detail, but we do urge that these issues be added to the agenda for the Yellow Creek Working Group that is to meet starting in early fall. As to planning for trail improvements, the staff, our primary concern, to be relatively brief, we're glad to see the development of a plan in 2025-27 with associated costings. Our primary concern with what is planned is with timing. We urge that this planning be expedited so that any fundraising that will be required from the private sector can begin as soon as possible. The necessary construction work will take years to accomplish, so let us get the work begun. Thank you.
Thank you for your deputation. Are there questions of the deputant? Councillor Sachs.
Yes, Mary, thank you very much for coming and for your deputation. So one of my question is this: there are many residents who have homes that back on or abut the ravines. Do you think they understand that they're not protected by their insurance policies from the effects of erosion?
That I'm afraid I could not comment on. Mr. Bossons may have a stronger sense of that, but I'm not sure they do.
Yes, well, that's my concern as well.
Yeah.
Do you think that your friends, your neighbors understand that when there's an exclusion for landslides, that means they have no coverage if the ravine behind their house erodes?
I would not think that that's widely understood, though some residents have had the experience of having a slide, particularly on the Moore Park side. So I think the consciousness around that might be rising. Again, Mr. Bossons has longer experience of that than I do. But
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I would just underline the urgency around all of it, because we're definitely seeing important erosion throughout the area.
Agreed.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Other questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, our next deputant is John Bossons, followed by Rob Spindler. John? Sure.
Thank you. Rob Spindler from the Moore Park Residents Association. Try to be as brief as possible. Our main issue is with respect to the Heath Crescent Stairs, which are the main entry point for residents to the north and east of the ravine, an entry that's heavily used by running clubs and walking clubs, bird watching clubs from across the city. So it's not just a local community matter, it's a much broader, has much broader use. The stairs were first damaged in 2013. It's now 2023. and their condition remains in need of repair. The TRCA will be stabilizing the slope 2024-2025 in preparation for stairs, but there's no budget for the stairs until 2030-31, which seems, I'm pretty incredulous that it is now a decade, and it could be 2 decades before the stairs are repaired. We are asking the city and this committee and the Parks and Forestry Department to try and find the money or find an alternative way of advancing the work to coincide with TRCA's stabilization work so that we have rehabilitated stairs in that 2024-2025 timeframe. Again, to reinforce, it is heavily used. It is part of our treasured ravine network. 20 years seems unacceptably long. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your deputation. Are there questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, our last deputant on this item is John Bossens. Thank you, John. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Councillor McKelvey. Mary and Rob have described the issues with respect to the two entry points where there's an urgent need for repair. The Heath Street, the Heath Crescent stairs, and the stairs down from the northwest end of the St. Clair Bridge, which have been closed for the last few years. I think that those points have been well made. It's urgent that we find the funds to get that work done, and I hope through Councillor Sachs and your efforts that those funds can be found. I mean, as Rob said, it's really quite unacceptable that it should take 2 decades to repair stairs that are an important link from the community into the ravine. The key points I would like to emphasize, turning to more general issues, are 2. First of all, the erosion that's taking place in the ravine is much more serious than just what threatens Toronto water infrastructure. I added a couple of photographs here in the letter that was submitted to the committee. The most important area is below Inglewood Avenue, where no Toronto water infrastructure is at risk. However, the houses above are. That slope has been eroded by approximately a meter of horizontal distance in the past 5 to 6 years, because unfortunately there was a dam there that was built in the 19th century that has on the side collapsed and directs the flow of the stream into the side of the bank with obvious consequences. The point I want to make is that the erosion that we face in the ravine is serious. It gets worse every year thanks to global warming. It also gets worse every year thanks to the increasing paving over of the watershed to the north. Roughly 10.5 square kilometers of area is the watershed that feeds into Yellow Creek. And when you have a major storm with that being paved over, instead of farmland absorbing the rain, it just all comes down in a massive rush. And the geomorphic study that was undertaken by Toronto Water discovered that, in fact, the flow rate in just even moderate rainstorms is extraordinarily high. It's a major erosion issue, and it needs to be dealt with. So consequently, the point I want to make here is that this is something that needs to be brought into the table to be dealt with as part of the environmental assessment that will follow the end of the geomorphic study. This will take place in 24-25, and so I'm just pleading to staff that the importance of this be elevated. I'm very grateful to Councillor Sachs for arranging, first of all, the staff involvement in the preparation of the report that's before you. I'm also grateful to her for getting the working group reestablished, which is to meet starting in the fall, and to proceed on this, both to deal with the erosion issues and how that can be dealt with, and how work can be scheduled for that. And secondly, and just as importantly, to develop a master plan. In the staff report, that's called basically a plan for the paths and bridges, et cetera, in the area. We need that because I think it's clear that the city's funding constraints are such that we're going to have to raise private money in substantial amounts in order to be able to get the work done that's required to make the Yellow Creek, Vale of Avoca, the kind of resource which it needs to be to satisfy the needs of the hugely growing population in the area. So I suggest, if I may make a suggestion, I think the appropriate thing to do with this report is simply to receive it. If we need to come back to the committee at some future point, we can do so, but there's a lot of work to be done, and as Mary said in her closing remarks, it's really important that we get moving on this quickly. Thank you.
Questions of the Deputant. Councillor Sachs.
Yes, thank you, John, and thank you for your very hard work on these issues for so many years. Do you think that your neighbors understand that as the ravines erode faster and faster, they are without insurance coverage?
I think your point's a very valid one. I think very few people really understand the details of their insurance. And I think that the risk of this is always underestimated. People look at the slope, they assume that, it's going to be there forever. And when erosion comes, it can come quite dramatically and hard. And that's a risk that I think is really underestimated by all too many people.
Right, and you're aware that at least 5 of your neighbors have been formally advised by the Toronto Region Conservation Authority that the slope behind their houses is unstable and recommended cost-shared soil stabilization, and they all refused to pay, correct?
Yeah, I'm aware of that, Councillor Sachs. Let me just say that it's a very different situation from the slope stabilization problem at Heath Crescent. It's more moderate, and the TRCA staff agreed that it can potentially be at least partially handled by getting rid of invasives and, in effect, by bioengineering the slope. So I'm aware of the issue. I think the people that were concerned may or may not understand the risk. Your point's a very valid one, but I just want to say it's not as severe a risk as the Heath Crescent situation.
Well, that's true, and the Heath homeowner did agree to contribute.
That's right.
But isn't it fair to expect that when bad things happen, as they increasingly do in this ravine, and homeowners suddenly discover that they don't have insurance, won't they be turning to us, looking for rescue, turning to the public purse?
They have been doing that both on the Rose Park Crescent failure and in Heath Crescent. They're looking to the city to actually do the work and pay for it, compensating them with some transfer of the land.
Right, so they expect, anyway, so that's a potential risk for the city.
Oh, it's absolutely a potential risk for the city, no question.
All right, and the cost of repairs in the ravine, we've been told, is in the hundreds of millions of dollars, correct?
I frankly don't know. This is something where the work to be done over the next couple of years is we'll come up with cost figures. I have no idea whether we're talking of tens of millions or more. We will find out. It's important that we do find out so that we can engage in a public, in a fundraising campaign to help what the city can do on its own.
One particular problem that you pointed out to me each of the times that we've been down in the ravine is the rusting of the steel cages that were designed to hold the creeks in place, the gabions. What is causing them to rust?
Salt.
Right, salt.
Because what's happening, it's remarkable, actually. This was a technology that was used in the 1980s and 1990s, essentially making wire baskets that could hold, moderate-sized stones, and in effect build up walls more cheaply in that fashion. The problem is that there is so much salt in the winter runoff from the paved parking lots, et cetera, in the watershed, that the bottom of the gabions gets eroded away. And the gabions fail at the bottom. The gabions that are resting on top of the bottom gabions collapse in as well, narrow the stream, make the problem even worse. Salt is a major culprit here, and quite frankly, the city uses too much of it in the wintertime.
All right, but salt is a major culprit in the collapsing infrastructure in the Vale of Avoca.
Correct.
And what does that mean in terms of the risk of further flooding, further erosion, further infrastructure destruction?
It accentuates it because when the gabions fail, they narrow the stream. And so, that increases the pressure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions? Okay, seeing none, that completes speakers on this item. Questions to staff? Councillor Sachs?
Yes, question for transportation. I think there's somebody here from transportation.
Hello.
Oh, hi, yes, I didn't know you were available for questions. Okay.
Yes, I am here.
So when you do your cost-benefit analysis of salt for the city, do you take into account the costs of, for example, the destruction of infrastructure in the ravines, corrosion caused by the salt?
Through the speaker, can you hear me? That's good, yeah, you can hear me. Through the speaker, we do not. We have a salt management plan that we've just recently updated with the sort of best possible information, working with Toronto Metropolitan University researchers on the subject. We update it on the regular. We hold our contractors accountable to it. I think the issue that we see more frequently with salt, because we try to balance the need for safety on sidewalks as well as environmental sustainability. I think the issue that we see that we do not have any control over is the private application of salt in the right-of-way, which again, people are doing in order to prevent slips and falls in the winter season. Certainly salt is a contributing factor to corrosion. We don't have any financial information about what that costs.
All right, so first of all, we're not doing anything to control, we are not presently controlling salt application by private property owners and their contractors, correct?
That's correct.
And we as a city don't have a financial estimate of the cost to the city and to city assets and public assets of damage caused by salt across the city. Is that right?
Transportation does not.
All right. Does anybody else in staff, does anybody have an estimate of what the damage to the city and city assets is because of salt? Okay, Toronto Water, do you have anything? Okay, Parks, do you have anything?
Through the speaker, we do not.
Okay, Environment, do you have anything?
Through the speaker, we do not.
Okay.
Point of order, Madam Speaker, point of order.
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Cole, listen, we're dealing with the situation in the ravine here, and now we're basically challenging staff about all these reports about salt cost and content. I think let's stick to the topic here. We can deal with the salt issue at another time. Thank you.
Are you leading to connect to the ravines?
Well, yes, because as we've just heard, the salt is a significant contributing factor to the collapse of the infrastructure in the ravines, which in turn worsens the erosion risk, which we don't have the money to fix. So yes, I think it's a directly relevant contributor to the problem we've just heard about so eloquently from the deputants.
Okay, thank you. I just note that staff may not be prepared to answer some of these questions, so I think you have to give them a little latitude to respond to you after the fact as well.
Can I add the Black Creek and the Humber River to the list?
No.
Okay. I'm happy to give staff time. Ms. Gray, if you have any further information to provide on this, please get back to me. All right, thank you. And same to any other staff. If you have, with time, further information on what the salt costs us in terms of ecological and infrastructure damage, I'd like to know what it is, please. Okay? All right, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there additional questions on this item? Speakers to this item? Okay, Councillor Saxon, moving receipt?
Yeah.
All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. Our next item is IE 5.4 Parkside Drive. There are two deputants, Kevin Taylor, Allison Stewart. Kevin withdrew. Okay, Allison. Do we have Allison online? In the room? I think you're familiar with the process. You have 5 minutes.
Can you hear me? Okay.
We can hear you.
Hello, Chair McKelvey and members of the IEC. Sorry if I'm a little discombobulated. My tech has just failed on me, so I will wing it. My name is Allison Stewart. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Public Policy for Cycle Toronto. We're a member-based charity that has been striving to support the city become a vibrant cycling city for people of all ages and abilities. And there's so much to be proud of today in 2023. So would like to iterate all the great work that's been done over the past few years. Especially I'm looking at the General Manager, Barbara Gray, and her team have done a phenomenal job. Regarding this item, we are really pleased to see that the Parkside Drive study is finally up on the table, and there are a few items that will be coming up for consultations beginning in the fall. This said, it is Cycle Toronto's position that solving the current unsafe conditions of Parkside Drive must hinge on road reconstruction. While technology is important, we've seen through the use of automated speed cameras that it is not the solution. And it remains a very unsafe and important corridor for the people that walk, bike, wheel, and drive. Right? This is an example of how all road users, regardless of their mode, are imperiled when the streetscape is not safe. And through road reconstruction, it's a great opportunity to support the High Park movement strategy and to really improve the safety for all of the residents and locals and the people that flock from outside of the local area to discover the joy of High Park. Additionally, one of the concerns we have regarding one of the options is that within the Complete Street guidelines, that includes having separated and dedicated space for cyclists. And as it is, there is no safe north-south route leading from Bloor all the way to the Martin Goodman Trail along the lakeshore. And that is a very popular route for people of the area seeking to access their waterfront. And right now it is completely unsafe. So we are really calling on the city as it embarks on these consultations that the leadership really focus on finding a solution that will accommodate all road users. So finding a way that the sidewalks are expanded for those that are walking to the area, but also finding a way that is going to accommodate that increased use of people that are riding bikes and other e-mobility devices, which will be on the chopping block in the next item. So with that, we would like to thank city staff and the local councillor and to really take a look at this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to redesign the road for the various uses of today. Thank you.
Thank you. And I forgot to start your clock, so thank you for being what I am sure is under 5 minutes. I appreciate it. Questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, thank you for joining us. Questions of staff? Seeing none, speakers to this item? Councillor Morley?
I'm happy to move receipt of the report.
Yep, we have to do it at start. No. Clerk is advised no. Okay, so sorry, what were we moving on? Closing the list. Okay, all those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. Our first speaker is Jason Michel, followed by David Lepofsky, followed by Wayne Antle. You all have 5 minutes. Jason, you're the first speaker. I believe you're online. Yeah, so that they know. And they could have prepared accordingly. Yeah.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Hi there.
Hi, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair McCalvary. My name is Jason Michel. I'm actually speaking to you from inside a vehicle where I'm being driven by my partner, a safe vehicle, unlike the proposed pilot for the e-scooters. I was a member of the previous Toronto Accessibility Advisory Committee, and we passed 2 strong resolutions within a year of one another back in February of 2020 and 2021, urging the city not to lift the ban on the e-scooters and to not engage in this very dangerous pilot project. I see nothing in the current proposal that changes anything that happened 2 years ago. As we all know, people are people. You can have all the rules and regulations and safeguards in place that you think will work, but it's unlicensed, it's unregulated, and people just don't follow the rules, as we all know, and we don't simply have the resources to police them. We need a cop on every block to even try and police, to make sure these scooters aren't entering onto the sidewalks or going too fast. From a personal standpoint, I'm totally blind. I was at a park very recently, local public park, with my sighted spouse, 2 children, and guide dog. And if not for a heads up from my sighted spouse, my children and I would have been collided into by an e-scooter because it was coming at a very, very, very rapid pace. Made no sound, no effort to stop or get out of the way. And I fear this will happen in the streets of Toronto if this pilot is allowed. Say other than I reiterate everything that all the disability advocates have said in their submissions, and I would like to yield the rest of my time to Mr. Lepofsky if I can. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Is there any questions of the speaker? Seeing none, David Lepofsky, you're the next speaker, and you have 5 minutes. Okay, we'll go back to you because it looks like we've disconnected. I'll also note that 2 deputants have dropped out, so this is a little bit shorter. Michael Covado. Okay, we don't have Michael. Marcia Yale.
I'm sorry,
Michael?
I'm here. I was just being promoted to panelist.
Okay, thank you, Michael. You have 5 minutes.
I have a presentation here that I'd love to share, if you give me one brief moment. I'm so sorry. First time with WebEx in a little while, and settings are being a little bit difficult. I'm Michael Covado. I'm Director of Government Partnerships for Bird, the shared electric scooter company. Shared micromobility company. We specialize in scooters and also offer e-bikes. I'm sorry, my presentation, unfortunately, does not want to come up. Okay. We are present currently in over 450 cities globally. Bird Canada has a larger presence than any other micromobility company within the entire country. Over the last 6 years, we have developed incredibly sophisticated technology to be able to address many of the needs of the community, both broadly and with specific groups in mind. All of our scooters are equipped with a bell, a headlamp, taillights visible up to 500 meters in low light conditions, a sticker which provides a tactile decal with 24/7 contact information, a braille unique identifier, as well as contact information for our community support staff. Every sticker or every scooter is also equipped with what's known as an IoT device that can control the speed of these devices, both in specific locations and across the entire fleet, allowing us to ensure that we aren't creating conflict with pedestrians. We're also the only company who can, at scale, deliver sidewalk riding detection technology and provide additional education to our riders, as well as bans if necessary based on their profile. The IoT device, basically a fancy GPS that can also connect to about 200 different sensors, can also provide controls in terms of where the scooters can and cannot go, where they can and cannot park, and again, at what speed they can travel at. We can have no ride zones, for example, during special events such as the Toronto International Film Festival, no parking zones, again, for example, maybe around the Rogers Centre, with the exception of some pre-selected locations identified as being appropriate during parking during large-scale events, and slow zones such as maybe around the waterfront trail where there is a high pedestrian level of traffic. In addition, we have highly sophisticated geofencing technology that can be applied to the parking of these devices, which can be done in collaboration with physical infrastructure to ensure that these are located only where people want them to be. Functionally, I know the word scooter has a bit of a frivolous connotation, but functionally, what this is a public transportation system that requires no subsidies from the government. It's almost 2/3 of our trips are taken for utility purposes, meaning with a specific destination in mind. And roughly 1/3 of our users are regular commuter users, meaning individuals who use these devices 6 times or more during a given week. This can be particularly important for those who live within a transportation desert or who have lack of access to public transportation or a personal automobile. This can be their means of getting around. Bird also is incredibly dedicated to safety and awareness. We run community events regularly where we do helmet giveaways. To date, we've given away over 100,000 to help promote safe riding. We also engage in safety schools to teach people about proper parking etiquette, safe riding behavior, etc., to ensure that the community is aware of how to engage in the proper use of our devices. We've also received commendation from the accessibility groups. This includes not only creating an exclusive partnership with an organization that can provide on demand the, quote, only truly accessible vehicle in the industry, but for our continued work through both providing funding and programmatic support. I do want to dive into, in the final minute here, just a couple of further details that we have. Given our advanced technology, we've been able to develop some features that further increase the safety, such as beginner mode, which reduces the acceleration profile and maximum speed for new users until they get a little bit more comfortable, and Safe Start, which is a cognitive test that individuals have to pass in order for the scooter to unlock after certain hours of the day to help provide those who might have had a couple of drinks from thinking this is a good idea from being able to access the device. Finally, we're also the only company to provide real-time data dashboards to all of our city partners to be able to say, so that they're able to see all of the devices in real time, what condition they are in, heat mapping data of the common routes, as well as start and end points. Happy to address any questions that this committee might have. I believe I am at time.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the Deputy? Councillor Sachs.
Yes, thank you. What are the key technology differences between the scooters that were available in 2021 and what is could be available for 2024?
2021 had geofencing technology. The technology now is significantly more advanced and more precise. Further, we've combined that with what we call sensor fusion technology that can actually detect when a scooter has moved from a roadway onto a sidewalk, and then engage in the proper, again, re-education, fining, or banning of users as appropriate should that behavior be repetitive. In addition, we also have more sophisticated capabilities in terms of the controls of how people can and can't park. At one point unique, a partnership with Google also enables our users to be able to scan their surroundings to prove that they have parked the device appropriately in specifically designated locations.
That's your last question. Thank you. Additional questions of the Deputant? Okay, seeing none, our next speaker. David, I believe we have you online now. David, can you hear me? Okay, well.
Hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, David. Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. You
Okay,
have 5
great.
minutes. I'll give you a 15-second warning. Go ahead.
Thanks so much. Thank you for the chance to speak to you. Please do not vote to go any further towards allowing electric scooters unless it is your view that endangering people with disabilities, endangering seniors, endangering vulnerable people is something that will improve Toronto. We know from city after city that no matter what you do, no matter how you try to regulate them, you will end up with them on the sidewalks, even if you ban them from the sidewalks. And despite the bogus claims from the corporate lobbyists, they do not have proven technology that will keep them off the sidewalks, that will keep them from being misparked. And so here's the deal. 2 years ago, city staff rendered 2 strong reports after ample research showing that these endanger us and that they will present costs to the city, that they don't have the benefits that the corporate lobbyists claim, and that there is no effective way to control them if you try to allow them but regulate them. The city got not 1 but 2 strong recommendations from the Toronto Accessibility Advisory Committee saying don't allow e-scooters because they endanger the safety and accessibility for people with disabilities, like blind people like me who don't want to be hit by them when we can't hear the silent menace coming. We don't want to have to trip over them when we're trying to walk on our sidewalks. Now, then City Council unanimously voted in agreement. So I don't know why it is that this is even being raised again now, other than the nonstop efforts by the corporate lobbyists. So we say, number 1, don't open e-scooters up now. Number 2, city staff have tons of other work to do. We don't need to burden them with more work now. Number 3, wait for the new mayor who just got elected to at least take office before you start deciding whether to wade into this. And number 4, if you reject all of that and you decide that somehow opening up the risk to people with disabilities and seniors is a worthwhile effort, and I hope you won't, then please take the motion before you and make the very carefully worded revisions to it that is in our June 22nd brief. Don't just consult the Toronto Accessibility Advisory Committee, who should have been consulted before we reach this stage to see if they should be reopened. Consult as well the whole disability community. Hold a public forum. Let us come forward and speak to you directly, not just these 5-minute deputations. Consult not only the medical officer of health, but Toronto Public Health. Don't consider opening it up and causing injuries to others until you hear from city staff that there is in place an effective way to actually track the injuries. An actual way to make sure that you know what the injuries, who's being injured, who's going not only to emergency rooms, but to their family doctors or physiotherapists. And don't burden us with having to not only suffer the injuries, but also go file complaints before you'll even take our injuries into account. Finally, and with this I'll close, and I welcome your questions, don't follow the claims of cities like Ottawa. Ottawa rejected the advice of their Accessibility Advisory Committee, rejected the strong requests of people with disabilities, went ahead with pilot after pilot, even though their own surveys showed that e-scooters were being left on sidewalks, were being written on sidewalks, despite the claims of the same e-scooter corporate lobbyists that they had technology to prevent it. Don't fall for it. Ottawa was wrong. Don't duplicate their mistake. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Are there questions of the deputant? Councillor Sachs.
Yes, thank you, David. You're always very passionate. You are aware, I'm sure, that the Ottawa Accessibility Advisory Committee motion at their 15th of February 2023 meeting revoked their previous opposition to their pilot and supported the continuation of Ottawa's shared electric kick scooter pilot, correct?
Well, after 2 years of being ignored, I think it's important for you to not just hear from them, but this actually proves why you need to hear from people with disabilities, not just the people who volunteer to serve on those advisory committees. Because we hear from the people with disabilities who are endangered by them. People with disabilities are reporting to us that Ottawa is still a significant problem due to the electric scooters. So it's important to view that information in the fullest context.
David, we're very clear that you oppose it, but I just want to get on the record. You are aware that the Ottawa Accessibility Advisory Committee now supports their e-scooter pilot, correct?
Okay, I don't know. I accept your representation. I have not talked to them since then, so I don't know what it was based on, and I can't comment on that. I can only tell you that the feedback we have consistently heard from people with disabilities in Ottawa is that they are still a danger.
Okay, February 15th, 2023. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there
Question,
questions?
the speaker,
Yeah,
Councillor
Councillor
Cole.
Cole.
Yeah, David, it's your council.
How are you? Yes.
Not too good. Listen, were you consulted or were other advocates like yourself consulted before this was brought back on the agenda here?
Well, I'll tell you this. Paul Ainsley, who voted against e-scooters 2 years ago, did not consult us, and he knows who we are before he raised this, brought the motion before your June 5th meeting. I commend Councillor Sachs for having spoken with me a couple of times to get some input, but she is, as you heard, keenly aware that our first position is don't allow them, and our second position is if you're going to have a study of it or give it over to staff, you need to revise, make some minor revisions to her motion as we suggested in our brief. As a very simple example, Councillor Cole, and you also voted against e-scooters 2 years ago, and I thank you for that, and I hope you'll do it again now, because I don't want to get injured now any more than I did then. And I've been in 2 cities in the past couple of months where they are a danger, and I witnessed it. Auckland, New Zealand, and Tel Aviv, Israel. But what I'm going to tell you is, for example, the motion, even if you're going to ask staff for a report, this motion kind of implies there should be a pilot and just ask sort of the how to do it. I think at most, the city staff should be asked, you recommended against an e-scooter pilot 2 years ago. Are conditions significantly better now that somehow you changed that recommendation?
Yes, David, another question is, I know that it's already pretty hazardous for people with challenges, vision challenges, etc., mobility challenges, to walk the sidewalks of Toronto now. Are you seeing a reduction in those challenges on our sidewalks right now without the addition of these e-scooters?
Councillor, thank you for the question. The truth is Toronto has been getting more inaccessible, harder to navigate for people with different disabilities, people like me who are blind, people who use mobility devices. Things have been getting worse. The Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act requires you to lead this city to become fully accessible, in fact, by 2025, which we're behind schedule on. The fact of the matter is, creating new barriers will make it even worse still, and electric scooters are a proven new barrier.
Now, I'm finding it quite challenging myself, being so-called able-bodied, to walk along our sidewalks, or, I'm a citywide jogger. I've never seen it so dangerous on our sidewalks, given the proliferation of all these delivery scooters and bikes and that are happening on all of our main streets. I mean, have you noticed an increase in the dangers for people with disabilities as a result of all these delivery scooters that are flooding our streets throughout the city?
Well, I'm going to tell you that when I'm walking with my wife who is sighted, she's warning me about these, because one of the dangers of the electric scooters that the corporate lobbyists are trying to push on you is that they are a silent menace. I don't hear one coming. I won't know it's coming till it hits me, and I won't be able to identify it after it hits me. And the same goes for all of you and all of your voters, your constituents, who are sighted and who do not have eyes in the back of their heads. So I know from sighted vulnerable we are when this silent menace comes at us. And just as one illustration, in Ottawa, at the behest of the corporate lobbyists, one of the companies at least said they'd put a beeping sound on their scooters. But the feedback we've gotten from blind people is it's not loud enough and not clear enough to be able to be heard amidst city noises. And you just heard deputations just a few minutes ago about the need to ban those leaf blowers, which are horrible. Imagine trying to hear an e-scooter that's already silent coming at you over that kind of noise.
Okay, thank you, David.
Thank you, David. Our next speaker is Marcia Yale with the Alliance for Equality of Blind Canadians. Marcia? Hi, Marcia.
I'm trying. Okay.
Hi, sorry, can you just speak again?
I'm trying. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. You have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I'm not going to repeat everything that David and Jason said so eloquently. Jason already said that he was standing in a park with children and couldn't hear a scooter coming racing towards him. So that tells me two things. One, that they are really quiet, and two, that the people that are riding them are hell-bent for running into people. You can't control people. And people on silent vehicles are going to do whatever they want to do. And I don't trust geofencing as a way to keep people off the sidewalks, just as I don't trust the law which says that bicycles are supposed to be off the sidewalks. That has never worked. And you don't have policemen on the streets of the city enough to keep these scooters off the sidewalks, and that's what it's going to take. So until they can figure out a way to keep them off the sidewalks permanently, put them where they belong, where they're not going to run into people, don't use us as guinea pigs, please. Disabled people, we have enough trouble on our own. We don't need to be used by the e-scooter people as guinea pigs to show you that it is a danger by getting us injured. We don't need to run the city like that. There are more important things that the Infrastructure and Environment Committee can be doing to make Toronto better. They don't need to add a silent menace. And the silent menace, that was first coined by the late John Ray, who was a tireless advocate against e-scooters. And honestly, silent menace is what they are. And that's what they will always be. Because again, they're being run by people who are going somewhere. That's all they care. They're not paying attention to where they are, who's coming towards them. They're just going somewhere, and they're being encouraged to use these things. So please don't use us as guinea pigs. Keep the ban. Don't come back to it. Don't revisit it. It's a ban. That's what a ban is supposed to be. It's supposed to be, that's it. That's the end. And I think that's basically all I have to say. I'll take questions, though.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the deputant? Thank you for joining us. Our next deputant is Aaron Binder.
Everyone. Thanks for the time today. And I really do appreciate hearing from so many folks with valuable opinions. I think we all really value safety here, and we're trying to figure out how we navigate the future of transportation. Just to give you some context, I'm the Chief Experience Officer at Segway of Ontario. And since 2004, we've retailed, serviced, and educated micromobility riders in Toronto, Ontario, and Canada. In 2017, we launched sales of Canada's first electric scooters, and we're considered one of North America's leading micromobility experts in the retail industry. And today I want to offer you some of our experience and insight. I want to reiterate, though, I agree that there are valid safety concerns that we all need to hear about today. But I will offer the counterpoint that the proof is already known. Full-size SUVs, trucks, and cars are the leading cause of pedestrian, cyclist, and micromobility user injury and death, not electric scooters, and especially not privately owned electric scooters. Based on sales data from my company and our peer group, we estimate that today there are about 40,000 privately owned electric scooters in Toronto, and that number continues to grow by about 8,000 to 10,000 per year. In Toronto, the population is also growing by about 45,000 to 55,000 people per year. And we really do need new forms of transportation to combat the challenge of adding these new residents to our streets. Rolling out better public transit and electric scooters will absolutely help move people more efficiently and reduce car congestion. Adopting a friendlier stance toward a wider array of micromobility devices will be an immense help toward many city emission and safety goals. We have 3 recommendations that I want you to consider today, And the first is, at minimum, legalize privately under the guide.
Thank you. Are there questions of the deputant? Oh, we're having connection issues.
Device program. Staff integration with pardon? Oh.
Sorry, just repeat
Am I
your
back?
last 30 seconds. The connection dropped.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have 3 recommendations for the committee today, and more broadly, City Council. The first is to legalize privately owned electric scooters under the guidelines of Ontario's pilot program. The second is to create a clear distinction between privately owned devices and any potential scooter share program the city might adopt. And the third is to develop a best riding practices guide in collaboration with retailers like me, riders, all road users, and community stakeholders, including vulnerable road user groups. We've developed a best riding practices for our customers, and we would love to see more businesses adopt a similar best riding practices guideline, whether they're a retailer like us or somebody like Bird. Ours emphasizes riding like a bicycle, stay in bike lanes, stay on the side of the road, don't ride on sidewalks. I don't think any of us like to see an electric scooter on the sidewalk. And we recommend safety equipment. One other thing I really want to mention before going to questions is outside of downtown Toronto, we've also seen our sales jump. Our sales and web data from 2021 to 2022 showed a 35% increase in web traffic and sales from Scarborough and North York. And I know our staff are talking to a lot of these customers, and they're saying that instead of it taking 2 hours to go to work on TTC each way, their commute is cut in half. On top of that, we're helping these people save money, put time back into their lives that they can spend with families. So I think there's a greater argument here to roll out Toronto's cycling network even faster so we can help protect these road users and get people moving faster and more safely, I'll add. The last thing I'll say is this past weekend, we partnered with Green Neighbors Network and offered test rides at Rennie Park, which is near High Park. And we had over 50 people come out and try our devices. Most of them were over the age of 50. I really think that there's an untapped potential here for all age groups, for all types of people to get onto new forms of transportation. But we need to work with the city on this to make sure we're not burying our heads in the sand. Let's get people on active transportation. Let's reduce car congestion, and let's get Toronto moving. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you for your deputation. Are there questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, I have to use the restroom, and we don't have quorum, so I am taking a 10-minute break. All those in favor? Doesn't have quorum to take the break anyway. So we'll convene in 10 minutes. accommodating my restroom break. Who's the next speaker? Adam. Thank you. Adam, are you on the line? We just have to go live too. Do you have Adam on the line? Adam on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Adam. Thank you for joining us. You have 5 minutes.
Okay. While we were on the break, I was able to look into Diane Sachs's inquiry on why the Ottawa Accessibility Committee might have changed their vote. There, as are in our city, after every election cycle, the makeup of that board changes. So that is one of the reasons. The other reason why some of this happens is because once something passes, just like me, when I am working with certain departments, there are compromises. I may not find what city transportation does is the best, but I still actually negotiate and work with them. So I'll have to do more research, and me and David Lepofsky and some of us will reach out to Ottawa and find out why it looks like their decision has changed. To start my own presentation, I want to bring up a key word. Some of you may know this word, some of you may not. The key word I want to bring up is ableism. Ableism is where prejudice or other things are set up against the disabled community, whether systemic, whether through bylaws. And the last 3 years with this COVID pandemic, I've already seen other issues of ableism that couldn't be avoided. But we've got a situation that can easily be avoided. And the other ironic thing is, it's funny that we've had a meeting full of tech glitches, which I'm glad you're still letting us join from home, and hope that that continues forever. But with all these glitches, we're having e-scooter companies promise us that they will be able to rent scooters and have all these safety provisions, and and they want to do the same sort of silly thing that people would do back in the 90s when renting jet skis. A lot of lakes have stopped renting jet skis because of some of these issues. So having the e-scooter rentals is absolutely ridiculous. And none of these things have really changed since we brought it to you, in the last 3 years ago, or in the last few cycles. Nothing has really changed with their technology. If anything, it's just that they've regrouped and worked on their lines and worked on their lobbying to try and make it sound like things have actually improved with the technology. In my last half minute that I have, I want to also, with the changes to Wheel-Trans, encouraging more of us to take regular transit. If we're scared to leave our apartments or our residences, then it's going to lead to more isolation and other issues. So maybe if we're not successful here, maybe I should start bringing the issues up to the Toronto Public Health Board, because the changes you want to make with rules will just lead to isolation and depression and illness. Thank you.
Thank you. That's time. Thank you, Adam.
That's time. Thank you, Adam.
Our next presenter, are there any questions of the deputant? Seeing none, our next presenter is Robert Gardner. You have 5 minutes.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
We can hear you. You have 5 minutes.
Great. Thanks so much for your time and consideration this morning. I just want to be brief, as we're very hopeful that the city will engage in the study moving forward. We're also very hopeful that the needs of all those represented here today will be listened to and will go into this important study. My name is Robert Gardner, and I'm the Director of Expansion at Lime. I'm writing today really to voice support for this study and just share a few reflections on why I'm certain the city of Toronto can build really a successful program that meets the needs of a diverse array of stakeholders. Of note, Lime, we have a long history of partnering with a variety of environmental advocacy, transportation advocacy, disability advocacy, and other groups to ensure that our vehicles are being used appropriately to build an inclusive program where there really are no decisions about us without us. Just a little bit about Lime. We have an experience of over 250 million rides. We've had our riders travel over 300 million miles in over 250 cities. We really pride ourselves on our commitment to sustainability and our operations and the depth of our local and municipal partnerships. We would really be honored to partner with you to provide information relevant to this study of Toronto's active transportation network. There's a lot of work to be done before moving any program forward. So I just want to reiterate a couple key points made by Councillor Sachs. Really that e-scooters can and have been providing a valuable transportation option that will help Torontonians get around in a congested city and help the city meet its climate goals. As I said earlier, we are deeply committed to sustainability and carbon neutrality. Lime is the first company to set a science-based carbon target in line with the Paris Climate Accords through one of our leading corporate target-setting organizations called the Targets Initiative. We're following the science to reduce our carbon footprint of our service and reach net zero by 2030. All of our reports on carbon mitigation strategies are available at the discretion of this committee, and we're happy to present them. We are seeing mobility programs develop throughout Canada and globally. These programs are working. This is a fact and a reality in almost 300 cities around the globe. We know that e-scooters are inexpensive, especially when low-income users enroll in our low-income program, which we call Lime Access. It's available for anyone on any type of benefits program. We're also happy to share that information in advance of any study. Also, we know that e-scooters use very little energy. In our case, we use renewable energy. They take less road space than any other mobility options. They create no pollution at the point of use and can be used without physical effort and virtually any clothing. I know that's something that's great in the summer. Lastly, e-scooters are fun to use. That's something that is often left out of the debate, but it is a great way to get around town. This notion has been definitively proved by the overwhelming evidence based in hundreds of millions of rides worldwide, showing the value of dockless scooter programs to residents, tourists, and non-users. For instance, we've seen these programs lead to road diets and other redesign efforts. With the correct regulatory framework, a deep commitment to shared goals and partnership, and an eye towards building a sustainable, really a long-term program, the City of Toronto can build a best-in-class active transportation program with a shared, carbon-free, and low-cost micromobility partner. I'm very happy to discuss insurance, indemnity, features like sidewalk detection, geofencing, the mandatory vehicle parking, which I know is going to be important. Also, our Lock 2 on vehicles, on vehicle raised braille markings. Additionally, our progressive disciplinary program, which is, I think, also something that we're very happy to bring, revenue sharing, and ultimately really how to build a program that takes into consideration how to accommodate all road users. I'm very happy to discuss all the technological advancements available, some of the differences in the past couple of years and advancements we've made, and really work to build a program that meets the needs of users and non-users alike. Doing so together would be a privilege and a pleasure. We really do look forward to working with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there questions of the deputant? Seeing none, our next deputant is Hamish, Councillor Morley is bringing a motion to extend to finish the item. Is that the will of committee? All those in favor? 1, 2. All those opposed? Let's try this again. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed? Carries. Our next speaker is Hamish Wilson.
Yes, thank you. This is a thorny issue. There's no doubt about it. There are many different factors in play, and I can see why there's such an appeal for a clean, fast, a relatively clean, fast, lightweight mobility option. So yes, and we have to go there because the climate crisis is an emergency now. There's no question about that. However, I also think that there's a real set of issues in how we are using our public spaces and sidewalks, and it may be more of an issue in the more dense core than it is in the more suburban areas. Certainly that's the case with the bike stats. The crash stats, when you see them, if at some point in time this can be put up. But there is a qualitative difference between the heat mapping of the use of our public space in the core and the sidewalks and the more suburban areas, which have more options in some ways. They really do. More room on the car arterials and the sidewalks. And yet there is a terrorism of traffic that the faster, quieter mobilities, including bicycles, have to remember Miriam Abelet a couple of decades ago, who was really bothered by the quick and quiet cyclists on the sidewalks disturbing pedestrians. And she had a point. She absolutely had a point. So this is a summary of crash stats that I've sort of shared through the years. And I'm sure it's been updated. Pardon me, I need to update myself in more than a few ways. But the concentration of the crashes tends to be higher, and the harms tends to be higher in the core than in the lower density areas. So that should be a guide. That maybe what we need to do is figure out a way of adjusting this handling of the micromobility in according to the overall density. So thank you. Now the enforcement will be oh yes, and speaking of crashes, if we do get into the actual monitoring of the details and which of crashes, which is a very important thing, and I'm glad that the motion, the item here has in item D, collecting detailed data on the, no, let's see what is it, the item E, pilot project would collect detailed up-to-date data on all injuries and collisions. Certainly in the old bike plan from 2001, police reports only tell part of the story. Researchers estimate that more than 80% of bicycle crashes go unreported to the police. And certainly I didn't bother yesterday when I had like the nearest door prize that I've had for a long while on Queen West. I'm glad I wasn't with broken fingers or in the hospital, and had good brakes, and had a bit of fussing with the driver, who at least sort of apologized, but I didn't like his attitude otherwise. But No, I'm sure you don't really want to hear it, but we need to have a degree of enforcement. And I've heard that Montreal is much better at actually enforcing traffic regulations. So you really might want to explore that, perhaps even by taking a trip there to explore their bike network as well, because I think that's part of our solution as well, is to make sure that we have a smooth connectivity, not just an easy, like a real linked network, but also smooth pavement. This is another issue. I think your standards for road pavement are car-based standards, not for the smaller wheels. And the road system is deteriorating. It is getting worse and worse and worse. That's a real set of issues. You need to adjust your spending choices to make sure it's investment, and maintenance is an investment, not merely big spending that sometimes is occurring on some projects more than others. I'm glad that there's mention of streetcar tracks as well. They are an inherent hazard to cyclists and will be for any micro-mobility as well, including when they go over on a 90-degree angle, not merely the parallel track, riding or trying to cross them. Spadina and Richmond is incredibly rough. People the scooters could take headers. 311 isn't good enough. 311 isn't good enough for getting the repairs. And I can go on about this, but I'm about a time. At least you're starting to talk about this, but there's such a set of issues with the e-mobility that is quick and quiet, and it endangers many, many people.
Thank you. Questions of the deputant? Okay, thanks for coming. We have 5 more speakers: Moaz Ahmed, Alan Conroy, Jeff Cattell, Allison Stewart, and John Bitov. Moaz? Hi, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Moaz Ahmed. I'm a transportation mobility advocate and research topics for about 20 years. We can hear me now? Okay, thank you. So specifically doing research into micromobility for about the past 10 years, and now I'm serving as the Chief Community Officer at Scooty Mobility, which is a startup incubated in the City of Toronto, currently operating e-scooters and micromobility in partnership with the City of Brampton. So I want to begin by saying that I will request that the committee support Councillor Sachs's recommendations and will vote to move them forward to City Council. And there are 3 reasons why I would like to bring that forward. The first reason is that the discussion of micromobility that the City of Toronto has had over the past 4 years, and other discussions of micromobility going back to the introduction of bike share, have typically focused on the idea of a service, a specific type of service for a specific type of mode. Today we're talking about e-scooters. In the past we were talking about bike share. What wasn't being discussed is micromobility and the way that micromobility fits in with the City of Toronto's mobility mix. Perhaps that wasn't an issue in the past, but it has become a more significant issue, not only because of the sharing services, but because of the rapid growth in the number of people purchasing e-vehicles, whether they're small, large, or even personal mobility devices that are electric. The other aspect of this is that the discussion really has seemed to focus on what is in the interests.
Sorry, I think we just lost our feed, so I'm just going to pause you for a second. We will resume.
Thank you. To continue, the second aspect of this is we have been discussing e-scooters and vehicles in isolation. And what hasn't been talked about is the role of micromobility within the city's broader vision for transformation, GHG emission reductions, active mobility, and even just simply cross-subsidizing the TTC. I'll give you a specific example with the TTC. If you have 55 people trying to get on a 50-passenger bus, what is the solution available? Leave 5 passengers behind, buy another bus at the cost of $1 million to purchase and operate for a period of 5 years, or see if it's possible to relocate some of those passengers and put them onto a cheaper and less expensive micromobility option, which might then make transit a little bit more accessible and more usable for other people. The other aspect of this conversation is that Toronto needs to consider the benefits of micromobility in terms of how it can build a relationship with the companies and the riders themselves. Unfortunately, what seems to be happening over the past few years is that companies have been coming in and essentially trying to sell the city on a low-cost or no-cost solution. And I believe that that's the wrong approach. And the company that I represent will not do that. We do not say that this can be done at no cost to the city. We say that we want to build a partnership with the city to make micromobility part of a series of solutions that cities need to implement because they have to build housing, because they have to provide for local mobility, and because they have to connect with transit. My goal here is to be here to answer questions from staff, from councillors as well, to make sure that we're providing that information as and when we have it. We've provided information to the City of Toronto for the past 4 years as part of their request for information on e-scooters and micromobility and how they fit together. We've provided information to the City of Mississauga, to the City of Brampton, which was part of the reason why we were selected for the e-scooter pilot in the City of Brampton. The other thing that I'd like to point out is just with respect to statistics from the City of Brampton, in the past 2 months, we've had more than 50,000 kilometers of riding, 18,000 or almost 19,000 unique users, and about 20,000 rides just in the space of 2 months. So if a suburban community like Brampton can see significant growth in ridership in a short period of time in partnership with the city, I believe that the City of Toronto can do far more in terms of ridership, in terms of GHG emission reduction, and in terms of connecting people to transit. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Our next deputant is Alan Conway. Hi, Alan. Is he online? Hi, please unmute. Go ahead, Alan. We'll go to the next speaker while we try.
Hello. Hello.
Hi. Thank you. You have 5 minutes.
Okay. I don't think I'm going to need that long, but that's all right. I can't really add too much to what has already been outlined, but I noticed that many of the companies who've come here and spoken today really they have tended to ignore the sorts of concerns that people have outlined. We're talking about a service that's basically unregulated, basically that if it results in accidents that involve people with disabilities, such as blind people, they're not going to necessarily know who hit them, and they're not going to be able to do very much about it necessarily. So we still find ourselves in a situation where we would find ourselves being used as guinea pigs for a pilot. Now, I use a guide dog. I've had the experience of having lost a dog very suddenly, and so I know what it's like when somebody, if a dog is injured or traumatized to the point where it can't work after being involved in an accident like that. Talking about a major expense to the schools, the Seeing Eye puts the cost of raising and training one guide dog at approximately $70,000 US. That's the cost to the school. There's also the emotional cost to the blind person if a dog can't work, and the waiting time, especially these days with schools trying to deal with the pandemic, it it could literally take months, and some of the smaller schools have lists that go on for well over a year. I don't want anybody putting me in a situation where I have to take those kinds of risks. So basically, that's really all I have to say. Everything else has been outlined by others, and I don't want to take people's time unnecessarily.
Thank you, Alan. Are there any questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, thank you for joining us. Our next deputants are Jeff Kettle, followed by Allison Stewart, followed by John Biddove. Jeff, are you online?
Yes, am I being heard?
Yep, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair McKelvey and members of the committee. Obviously, this item concerns a letter from Councillor Sachs, which recommends two things, recommending moving forward with a report on a micro-mobility strategy as part of a comprehensive active transportation network. And secondly, moving forward on specifically on a e-scooter rental pilot project with a specific list of characteristics. My deputation this morning is not focused so much on many of the issues that deputants have raised around what I would call substantive issues of safety and movement and so on, more on what I would call procedural aspects and the appropriateness of moving forward with this item in this manner at this time. So there are three comments we wish to make. One is that we find it odd that such a specific topic and detailed direction lacks a supporting report by staff, giving context to the requested direction. It's sort of, you know, the report sits in isolation, and it shouldn't on such an important topic. Regarding recommendation 2 about the pilot, only 2 years have passed since the matter was decided by City Council. So the question really is whether there are any new circumstances that would warrant consideration of a change of direction. As such, a preferred approach may simply be to request staff to report back on whether to reopen the matter, rather than assuming that it should be opened up. And thirdly, we question the appropriateness of your committee providing direction to the General Manager of Transportation Services without going through City Council for approval. This applies especially in regard to recommendation 2, which would amount to a complete reversal of the City of Toronto's current approved direction. We therefore recommend that Councillor Sachs' recommendation be modified as follows. Firstly, that, and the wording is the same for the first one, except that we would add the committee should recommend to City Council that the General Manager, so on and so forth. And then secondly, which is a complete rewrite of it, the Infrastructure and Environment Committee should recommend to City Council again that staff report as part of the report back referenced in recommendation 1 concerning whether there are any changing circumstances that would justify reopening the matter of an e-scooter rental pilot project, for which council direction was given in 2020. That is our deputation, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions of the deputant? Okay, our next deputant is Allison Stewart, followed by John Biddove.
Hello again, IEC members and city staff that are in attendance. Again, I'm Allison Stewart from Cycle Toronto, and I'm here to reiterate our support for a comprehensive micro-mobility strategy before making a decision about introducing an e-scooter pilot or any new pilots for micromobility devices. Without taking a thorough and holistic analysis of the various e-mobility devices that are being increasingly adopted across cities around the world, including our own, we need to take a look at the supporting infrastructure that can accommodate these additional forms of mobility. So we really do think it would be premature at this point for the city to make a determination on whether or not an e-scooter pilot should be taken. Additionally, it really is imperative that the adoption of any emerging mobility options won't negatively impact the safety and accessibility for people of all abilities in Toronto. I'm certainly been moved by Adam's deputation and reminding everyone about how ableism negatively impacts an increasingly large part of our population, especially as we're aging, and it doesn't take much to become impacted by disability. I would argue that it's even more critical that the micromobility strategy include the necessary infrastructure that will accommodate the adoption of new modes, as well as safety for the existing network of bike lanes, for example, because with the growing number of e-mobility devices that are currently using them, there needs to be a review of what the appropriate size that bike lanes should be expanded to accommodate mobility. For example, allowing different devices to travel at different speeds, as well as ensuring that it can support any official pilots, such as the increase in e-cargo delivery. That is something we encourage as well, because it removes trucks from our streets and roads. This said, should the city determine that piloting an e-scooter program is the right direction for the city, Cycle Toronto believes that it must be managed by the Toronto Parking Authority and be integrated with bike share and their on and off street parking strategies and plan. We are concerned that adding a new mobility fleet to bike share service offering without a comprehensive micromobility strategy could risk the deployment and implementation of their approved 4-year expansion. And that we're really hoping they focus on that to ensure that they can expedite bike stations across all wards of the city. We'd also like to add that should an e-bike pilot be on the cards, that it should be a docked system so that alleviates any concerns that scooters will just be left blocking sidewalks and or taking up the shortage of bike parking that we have. When, last year in Ottawa, I was visiting friends and of course couldn't help but check out the e-scooter pilot. And what I saw really does support the concerns that we're hearing from different disability organizations. In addition to them being left everywhere, that some of the lack of safety. So many of the people that were seen on this pilot were groups of young people, like bridal power parties, the Stag and Does, seemingly drunk, riding these for their amusement, not wearing helmets, and riding within traffic. So we certainly don't want to add more danger to our streets for those using them. So in closing, would just like to reiterate that until the city makes a determination on the feasibility of an e-scooter pilot, that a comprehensive micromobility strategy is presented and that it accommodates not just the various e-scooters that people keep requesting for in Toronto, but also that considers the various e-mobility items that the province is currently seeking to pilot. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there questions to the deputant? Okay, seeing none, our final deputant is John Bitov. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very, very much, Madam Chair and councillors. Haven't been back here in a while, and it's always fun. My name's John Bitov. I'm one of the founders of Bird Canada, and I'm on the board of Bird Global. Bird Canada is the largest electric scooter operator in the country. I invest in many different businesses, and I found this one interesting because I believe electric vehicles in all modes of transportation are inevitable. I am not a lobbyist. I'm not a corporate lobbyist. I'm a proud Torontonian. I'm a business owner. And I invested in electric scooters because I believed they are a way to improve our communities across the country. I think what we have to do is take the opportunity to implement them in a regulated environment that works for the community, the users, and the people who will be working with us. There's a few points I want to make. First of all, it's fun to follow the leaf blower discussion because a lot of the discussions I found were analogous in terms of what we're doing. If it is about noise and air pollution, then we should be looking at things that benefit our community. We're all against those things that can cause issues, that can pollute and create issues. I think that you should know that we did a study in 2021 that 70% of Torontonians want some kind of pilot to move forward. The green revolution is real. All cities are getting on board. 20 cities in Canada have already implemented electric scooters. Montreal, Bird Canada just started a Montreal pilot this month, and Vancouver RFP is underway. And as a Vancouver councillor pointed out, if we're all about being green, then we must get behind things like electric scooters. We have underutilized third lanes across the city, which will work very well and complement our electric scooter network. We support the pilot test with what's required to make sure the scooters are safe and avoid the issues some cities have made in the past when they were early adopters of this. And it's, you do live and learn, but the benefits we have now are that we know what's required. We have the technology and the systems. Of course, like any other mode of transportation, be it car, bike, or anything else, accidents can happen, but it's our goal to make sure that these are minimized. No one wants to be part of anything that creates issues like that you can't try and stem or control. Reality is electric scooters are everywhere today across our city, but it's only for people who can afford them. Electric scooter sharing serves those who can't afford to purchase their own electric scooter. So we have to be pragmatic and look at this in terms of how can we do this, how do we license private scooters, and how should we permit shared scooters. They are everywhere, but unregulated and creating a shared service together, we can control what the program should be. We can control the speeds, the service areas, everything that should be required. Allowing a pilot is the best way to put in the protections that the city is looking for, because right now you have an untenable situation. As you heard, it's growing at 30 to 40,000 a year from one of your earlier speakers. But we can put in the safety features, speed features, any other location features that are required now. One of the speakers earlier brought up Tel Aviv. I just want you to know in Tel Aviv today, there's 179,000 scooter riders per day. That's how active the program is. One of the speakers earlier talked about noise emissions from Ottawa. We've been asked to turn down our noise emissions from the city and staff. So we're doing all we can to be proactive and cooperative and work with the municipalities. We all, as someone once said, a stronger planning and stronger city is stronger for the community, and we should all be on board. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Are there questions of Deputy Councillor Sachs?
Yes, John, we've heard today and on other occasions passionately from disability advocates that e-scooters are a threat to their health and safety. Why should we allow them?
Well, first of all, there are other issues like bicycles that can create health and safety. I think we have to be proactive, not allow on sidewalks. If you want to go with noise emission, fine. Find the levels that work acoustically that, the community is in favor of. I think that it's like anything else. You have to harness technology and use it to your benefit and find ways to put rules around it that'll work. We're completely aware of the disabled community. But I think as other cities have realized, there's a lot more important benefits to a community to get these electric scooters licensed and to look after some of the stakeholder groups that could be impacted as opposed to not having them.
We've heard a number of them say they don't believe your sidewalk prevention technology will actually keep scooters off the sidewalk. Why should we believe you can actually keep scooters off the sidewalk?
Well, I would have thought that's the point of your test, is to prove that we can do it.
Well, can you?
Yes.
So what's...
We can do it. Now, you got to realize a city like Calgary permits them on sidewalks. Now, they have wider sidewalks, so it's something that the city wanted. But if you don't want them on sidewalks, our geofencing technology will not allow them on the sidewalks.
Now, the province created a 5-year pilot period to allow e-scooters in Ontario. When does the pilot period run out?
I think in 2 years.
Okay. And do you think that if we had a pilot project, we would get it all right the first time?
Yeah, I think one season of implementing scooters with the right kind of data collection should give the city enough to know what they should be doing long-term, if it's in the benefit of the city or not.
Now, you've mentioned we heard from Aaron that there's 40,000 e-scooters already in the streets of Toronto, growing 8 to 10,000 a year. And in addition, we now have unregulated companies renting scooters in Toronto, correct?
That's not us. I'm not aware of who is doing it, but that is not something we would do.
No, but you know it is happening.
Well, there's a market out there that people have a need for.
Right, and the unregulated scooters don't have the kind of sidewalk prevention technology that I'm looking for in my motion, correct?
I highly doubt they have that capability.
Right. So in terms of risk to the disability community, are we better to allow an unregulated market to continue to explode, or are we better to have a pilot project that we regulate?
Well, without question, we're here to say that we provide benefits to the community, and we want to work with you to regulate us in the right way to work for all your stakeholder groups, including the disabled community.
And would it, in your view, is it more risky for the disabled community for us to have a regulated pilot with sidewalk prevention, or to simply allow the uncontrolled expansion of the private and unregulated rentals?
You want a regulated system that works for the disabled community.
And if we want a regulated system that works for the disabled community, we have to authorize such a thing at least to be studied, correct?
That's why we're here, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions of the deputant? Okay, that's the next deputant. We'll move on to questions of staff.
Thank you.
No questions of staff? Councillor Morley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask staff a couple of questions on this item. Can you speak to the motion before us? Is it feasible? We've heard about the Ontario pilot project having a 2-year time frame. Is it feasible for us to action a pilot in short order as is suggested in the motion before us?
Well, it depends on the type of model that's developed. Typically, a best practice is a request for proposals where there's a competitive tender and the municipality sets out all the things necessary that they think, based on research, are best practices. It can take, procurement can take some time to do well, but it can certainly also move quickly. So it really is dependent on the process. But I will say that one of the things that may need to be looked at in more detail is the structuring of it with the Bike Share Toronto and looking at the current system.
Thank you. We've heard today some concerns from advocates and deputants around moving forward without more clarity and without more information. We are currently looking at a micromobility strategy at a larger scale, and is it possible for us to include recommendations to council around a pilot through that micromobility strategy?
I think the intent of a micromobility strategy is to look comprehensively at all the different new lightweight personal vehicles, and through that there are various provincial pilots, and it would weigh all the benefits and implications and provide recommendations as to the pilot opportunities.
Thank you.
Councillor Sachs.
Thank you. So the first question is, in terms of risk to the disabled, to the disability community, are they more at risk with unregulated rentals, such as what we're seeing exploding in Toronto right now, or in a pilot where we set the conditions and then was run by a city, which creates a greater risk to the disabled?
I would say that the research that we're seeing from medical studies is that they both present risks to pedestrians and people with disabilities. And I just want to note that yesterday we did receive an email when we were consulting with Toronto Public Health that the medical officer health reaffirms her position that she supports the continued prohibition on e-scooters in Toronto.
Well, we have a prohibition right now on our books in Toronto, but we're not doing anything to enforce it, correct?
I think we would see a significant order of magnitude change if the city were to endorse both rental and shared and private e-scooter. We would see significant, like a multifold increase.
Okay, but I'd appreciate if you try to answer the question. We're not doing anything right now to enforce the current ban, correct?
Correct. There are no resources to chase someone down on a sidewalk or on the street.
Right, and we know that not only are private scooters multiplying in the city, but we also now have companies renting scooters in the city, and we're not doing anything about that either, correct?
That's correct, but again, endorsing an e-scooter pilot would see a significant increase in the volume that would be on streets and the conflicts on sidewalks.
I'm trying to ask you questions, and I'd appreciate you try to answer the questions. So we have a growing problem right now that we're not doing anything about.
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
Yes, thank you. Agreed.
Point of order.
Yes, Councillor Cole,
Councillor
and
Cole.
I agree. I think I know where your point of order is. We just have to be nice
Yes,
to
let's
staff.
not get into that treatment of staff. Thank you.
I'll let you rephrase that, Councillor Sachs.
Okay, so if the e-scooters that are on the street today, the private scooters and the unregulated rental companies, to the best of your knowledge, are they equipped with sidewalk prevention technology?
The private e-scooter, personal e-scooters, most of them don't have sidewalk prevention technology. However, I would note that it's an emerging technology and it's not working to the degree that is being marketed.
So it's not, what I requested was a staff report evaluating whether it works, correct?
A staff report can certainly cite experiences that are even currently happening in the Greater Toronto Area and Ottawa, and Waterloo and Hamilton, where the technology isn't working consistently or effectively.
So through the Speaker, Councillor Sachs, we certainly can look at that. It is what Janet's describing is a very emergent technology with some limited applications that we would certainly look to, and we do track quite closely. But it is not a long-standing and tested program that we're seeing tons of results. So while we will look at it and we will provide feedback on it in a shared micromobility report, it will not be the kind of definitive long-term data that I think we would typically try to bring forward for council to help inform a decision. Is that fair, Janet?
Yeah, but you're not going to, well, in any event, the purpose of what I asked for in the motion was that you report back as to whether this technology is effective, and that is what you would do if we ask you for this report, correct?
We will do that to the best of our ability, yes.
Okay. And in terms of the pilot, if we don't take advantage of the 5-year pilot, the provincial pilot gives us a window in which to try things out, correct? And that window is going to expire in 2025?
The Ministry of Transportation has indicated that they're looking at pilot project extensions to 2028.
So they might or they might not.
Okay. Correct.
In the micromobility report that you're planning to bring to council next
This is your
year,
final question.
Will you be looking generally at a high level at various technologies, or will you be actually looking in detail as to what it would take to have a successful pilot?
Through the Speaker, we'll be looking at specific emergent technologies that I think they include Golf carts have been proposed. Janet, there are 5 of them, I think, that we'll be looking at in some detail, because the original report that we did previously looked sort of broad across all of the components. So this would be a more specific detail to be able to provide council with enough information to make an informed decision.
Additional questions of staff? Okay, speakers on this item?
Can I ask that we adjourn 15, take a break and talk before we get on to?
No. You can move it, and no, because we have to do it in open with quorum. Okay, Councillor Sachs.
Well, sorry. We're in a situation where we have a problem right now. We have, as we've heard, 40,000 scooters on the street. We have companies now opening up to rent scooters. So the number of scooters that I'm seeing on the street are exploding. And we're not doing anything right now to enforce the rule that we have banning these things from the street or the sidewalk. We're not doing anything to protect the disability community, and we're not doing anything that would support law-abiding companies who might be willing to put this technology on if it works. We just have a free-for-all. And I think we would be better off if we ask staff, as I've proposed here, to give us a report as to whether we could have either some successful control of the private scooters and the illegally operating scooters, which are exploding right now, and a controlled and regulated pilot, hopefully operated by our Toronto Parking Authority, integrated into bike share. We don't want the e-scooters to be eroding the bike share program, which is such a success for Toronto and which we've invested so heavily in, nor I think do we want the kind of Wild West craziness on the sidewalks that I'm seeing in my ward right now. So cities like Ottawa have gone ahead, have got some experience we can learn from. I think it's very telling that the Accessibility Advisory Committee in Ottawa has completely reversed its position. In 2021, they were violently against any kind of e-scooter pilot. In 2022, and in this year, they're now in support of the pilot. What has changed? They have put significantly more restrictions on the scooters that can be operated. They require them to have sidewalk prevention technology. They have fees for the companies that pay for all the city resources that are required so that it's cost neutral to the city. They're collecting data. They've got very strict restrictions on where things can be parked, and as a result, they've had a dramatic decrease in problems, and they've had a dramatic increase in support. The City of Toronto doesn't have to make all of our own mistakes. We could learn from other cities. We can learn from Ottawa. We are in a situation where downtown is completely congested. The data collected in Ottawa suggested that a large percentage of the people who are using the scooters are using them in place of going in personal fossil fuel vehicles, which create air pollution, climate pollution, and congestion, and those are all big problems for the City of Toronto. So what I'm asking for here is for staff to come back, given the new technology, and tell us, okay, does it seem reasonable that it could work? If the answer is no, and certainly we heard from Ms. Lowe her very strong position on this, if the answer is still going to be no, the answer is going to be no. But if the answer is yes, as Ottawa is convinced, and I've spoken at length with Tim Tierney, the Vice President of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, who's on the Ottawa Council, who has spent an enormous amount of time on this. With the kind of restrictions that I've asked for in my motion, this works. It works to get people out of cars. It works to give a mobility option to people who don't otherwise have a mobility option. The Ottawa report, which is available to everybody, shows that many people, and again, this is particularly an issue for women, who don't feel comfortable walking at night, feel much more comfortable if they're on a scooter because they can move faster and get to their home. Gives people a last mile option. So there's a number of social benefits that a controlled pilot can achieve. If we don't do that, then the vacuum is going to be filled by the unregulated operators. I've tried very hard to see if we can get any kind of enforcement against the unregulated operators. And the really clear response that I received both from MLS and transportation is absolutely not. We're not going to do anything about them. So if we don't provide a legal, controlled option that does have protections for the disabled community and seniors, and just, people like Councillor Cole and myself, then that vacuum is going to be filled by the unregulated ones, and that, I think, will make everybody worse off. So I am asking support from my colleagues to ask for this report. It's just a report. We heard from Fontra, well, why would you go ahead with a pilot without a report? We're not going ahead with a pilot without a report. I'm asking for a report as to whether we should have a pilot. I'm simply asking that we move fast enough to take advantage of the 5-year period that the province has given us, and that we learn from the hard-earned experience of cities like Ottawa, and that we get with the flow, live with our climate action commitments, and see if this could work for us. Because otherwise what we're going to have is much worse.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Additional speakers, Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to sort of highlight my support for Councillor Sax's general intent around this piece. I agree, and I think the goal and frankly our responsibility here is eventually a regulated system that works for all Torontonians, but we do need to do some work before we get there. I do have a motion, if clerks could please share that on the screen. It does take from Councillor Sax's motion, but it does make it a little bit more abbreviated, a little bit less prescriptive, so that we're still going to be looking at an active transportation, micro-mobility strategy report back from staff that includes information and recommendations around an e-scooter rental pilot, and some of the other considerations that we know we need to be thinking about as it relates to regulating the private market, speeds, etc. We've heard even all the way out in Etobicoke Lakeshore from residents. I met with a gentleman named Peter at my most recent Consit Day who has a lot of concerns about the speed, the use, the silent sort of nature of these scooters, and really wanting to make sure that all pedestrians, cyclists, and folks who are navigating our streets are safe and understand what's expected of them as they're moving through our city. So we've heard about these as silent menaces. They continue to menace our city. They're not going to go away, and so I think it's important for us to take some intentional action around this, but to also work within the parameters and the resources that we have, both with our staff team and otherwise. So I look to my colleagues for support on this as an alternative motion, and that we would also, again, taking from Councillor Sax's motion, that we would have City Council request Transport Canada to also regulate harmonized micromobility vehicle safety, standards, testing, etc., so that, again, we can get to the goal of a regulated system that works for everyone. So that's my motion. Those are my comments, and thank you to my colleagues and staff for their work on this.
Thank you. Additional speakers to this item?
Councillor Cole.
Councillor Cole.
Yes. Obviously these scooters and these type of mobility vehicles, whatever you want to call them, are going to be here. The problem we have here in Toronto is it's called resources. The city is in a financial freefall. We don't have the resources to, never mind enforce these pilot projects or put them together, but we will never have the resources to basically monitor them, to ensure that they're abiding by the rules. We don't have enough police officers right now to deal with the fentanyl poisoning outbreak, the shootings that go on every day, the traffic violations, the speeding car. We don't have police officers, never mind the bylaw enforcement or transportation officials. I can't get crossing guards at major intersections where hundreds of kids cross without crossing guards. That's the reality. I know people want to avoid the reality, but that's the reality we have. We have no money. And to ask city staff, and I see the motions, and there's about 30 things you want staff to do. Where are they going to find the time and the hours to do all these things over the next weeks, months, years? But we keep asking staff to do more and more and more.
If you don't have all the tattoos.
And, we have to, say, let's look and see if they do these pilot projects somewhere else. Let's find out if everybody's talking about Ottawa. You can shoot a cannon off in the middle of Ottawa in the middle of the day and never see anybody. Ottawa's not a good example. It's a very passive city. All these civil servants are all working from home, for God's sake. Anyways, never mind. That's where my wife comes from. But I don't get to say too much more about Ottawa. Anyways, but I just want to say that let's listen to our advocates. David Lepofsky, Adam Cahoon, Louise Rousseau, who's not here, longtime advocate. They're imploring us to not do this. They've implored us in the past, and they're imploring us again. If you can get them to be on side, I'm on side. But right now, unfortunately, you have not consulted enough with the advocates who are in the front lines of this. And they need to be, as I think Marie Yale said, they don't want to be guinea pigs. Sorry, they don't want to be guinea pigs. That was her words. So I know it is something that's eventually going to come, but now is not the time to proceed with the use of our resources, staff resources, and with this approach that may work. I'm not saying it's not going to work, but whether this type of, what do they call it, some kind of buzzword about keeping these off the sidewalks, I'll believe it when I see it. Right now, our sidewalks are packed with everything, not only downtown, everywhere. Because we've got, I'm a dog owner myself, people walking dogs, these deliveries, bicycles, scooters, they've taken over our sidewalks. And an able-bodied person like myself is always wondering who's going to come behind me. And they're all silent. The silent menace, it's there. So walk in their shoes. Walk in the shoes of David Lepofsky and Adam Cahoon, who's in a wheelchair, both constituents. Louise Rousseau in her wheelchair. Try a day in their wheelchairs and walking as a blind person like David Lepofsky is. Then come back and see if you support these type of vehicles on our streets, sidewalks, whatever. So anyways, I just will not support it, and I don't think it's a time to do this, given all the reasons I've stated. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional speakers to this item? Okay, I have a motion. I firstly appreciate that Councillor Morley just did that work, but we haven't looked at it in depth, and I've already prepared this. This is asking that the Infrastructure Environment Committee forward the item to City Council without recommendations, request the General Manager to report directly to the City Council meeting with recommendations on planning for e-scooter program in the City of Toronto, and those could very well be Councillor Morley's revisions. I have said it before, I'm scootered out. I really am. We did not go through with this in the last term of council due to the significant concerns that we heard again today. But what was different in the last council compared to this council is that we did not have a scooter champion. And if Councillor Sachs wants to be the scooter champion, I am happy to have her do the work to make